Wow, happy Monday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis, all joining you for the next few hours here on 580 Sports Talk. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon hours with us. We've got plenty to get to on the show today. We'll talk some Chiefs here in this opening hour of the show. One major free agent target is off the board for Kansas City, but how big of a target was he actually for the Chiefs? We'll talk some Mike Evans here in a moment. We'll also get to some news and notes from around the NFL coming up at the bottom of next hour with Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated. He will join us for our weekly talk about the National Football League on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. We'll get to the Royals in the 4 o'clock hour. A lot of pitching news and notes for the Kansas City Royals. Plus, I know you guys are excited about this. More stadium drama.
We love it.
Who doesn't love
shocked,
stadium drama?
Are we shocked, though? I'm not.
No, not one bit. I just got an email today pitching me to vote yes in Jackson County. Unfortunately for Royals PR, I do not live in Jackson County.
Or anywhere close, really.
Yeah, no, I really don't. I've, in fact, actively been moving farther away from Jackson County, Missouri in recent weeks. So I'm not necessarily their target audience. And they probably don't want to hear what my thoughts are on the matter either. So we'll get to the latest from that and also from Surprise Arizona and Royal Spring Training coming up here in just a little bit. We'll talk a little college basketball from the weekend. KU is in unfamiliar territory. The Jayhawks are now 14th in the country. That is the lowest they have been in 3 whole years, which is crazy. And is going to also lead into my ugly in today's Good, Bad, and Ugly as we recap the weekend. Something that a small group of KU fans are doing that, to be completely honest, is pissing me off. So we're going to get to that coming up in the 3 o'clock hour when we recap the weekend. We'll talk some KU. K-State lost to Cincinnati this weekend. NCAA tournament hopes. Not looking great. Looking grim.
Yeah, they needed that one, and gave us 29 points off turnovers. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it has been.
And they are what they are.
Yes, like the stuff they do well, they do well. The stuff they don't do well cost them that basketball game. And you know, they made Cincinnati made the tough shot, and Kansas State did not make the tough shot, and that's how the cookie crumbles. That's really 3 games this year where the opposing team has made a difficult shot, an objectively difficult shot in the final seconds to beat Kansas State. And if any one of those goes differently, you feel a lot better about their tournament chances. If any 2 of them go differently, they're probably on the right side of the bubble as we sit here. But so it goes.
The bright side for K-State is, you know, the 9-9 magic number that Jerome Tang himself set before the season. If K-State is able to find a way to finish 9-9, in the next week, they will pick up their 2 best wins of the entire season.
Yeah, I mean,
so they're still alive.
They're not cooked. They just have to beat a team they've only beaten 1 time in their gym in the last 30 years, and then beat a top 10 team at home.
They're not cooked, but they have to go from line cook to executive chef at a 3-star Michelin restaurant in the span of 6 days. So, you know, we'll see. It's not impossible.
No, not dead yet, but definitely on life support.
Grim.
It's the Big 12. It's a road game.
That's true. So we'll get to that. We'll talk some high school hoops this hour. State tournaments. They are set. Best week of the entire year. State tournament week for high school hoops. We'll recap some of the sub-state action, tell you who is going to the various state tournaments coming up here later on this hour. As I mentioned, we'll recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the week. Coming up later on tonight at 6 o'clock over on our sister station, Country 106.9. We've got the Washburn Basketball Coaches Show before the MIAA tournament begins this week. So plenty to get to today on 580 Sports Talk. We would love for you to be a part of the show. Hit us up on the Top City Mental Supply text line, 785-272-9429, or join us on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is called 580 Sports Talk. Just head to the YouTube website, youtube.com, search 580 Sports Talk. You can subscribe to our channel there, and you can, of course, watch today's live stream and hang out with us in the comment section. The video stream can also be found pretty much everywhere. All the places you go regularly, you can find the video stream. That includes 580 Sports Talk on Twitter. That includes 580WIBW.com, the WIBW News Facebook page, and again, right there on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube. And a reminder, too, that our Top City Metal Supply text line is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. From construction sites to renovations, from the farm to the garage, Top City Metal Supply understands the value of precision and cost efficiency. No more wasted materials, no more wasted money. Metal cut to the exact size you need. Top City Metal Supply, located on South Topeka Boulevard. The Kansas City Chiefs were reportedly interested in Mike Evans. We'll get to that specific Chiefs-related detail in a moment, but the best free agent wide receiver on the market, I guess if you're a big T. Higgins guy, maybe you would have had him first, but he's already been tagged. Mike Evans, 2-year, $52 million extension to return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He also got a pretty hefty guarantee. $35 million of that is guaranteed. Theoretically, they could cut him after the first year. They're not going to. He's one of the greatest Buccaneers of all time. I mean, he's there with Warren Sapp, Simeon Rice, certainly a better person than Warren Sapp at the very least. Like, the all-time great Buccaneer. His agent even told Diana Rossini of ESPN, Mike called me this morning and said, I want to stay with the Buccaneers. And they got a deal done. They worked it out. They got it done. He's going to stay.
Would you have guessed if you had woke up this morning and seen Mike Evans signs 2-year extension with Tampa Bay? How close do you think you would have gotten to the actual guarantee and the actual annual value?
I think I would have been about $5 million off. I would have said 20 or 21 per year. Like 2 years, honestly, that makes sense. On the other side of 30, like after that, if he plays it out, if he's still healthy, they might just do the one year by year rolling contract thing. Wouldn't be surprised at all by that. No, I would have told you I think he probably could have gotten 20 or 21 million because I still think Mike Evans is awesome. And he still is putting up huge numbers. He's still a great red zone. He had 13 touchdowns last year.
Tied for the league lead.
But again, wrong side of 30. Tampa is in kind of a weird spot. It sounds like Baker Mayfield is going to get a deal done. From what I have read today, that sounded like it was almost a package deal that Evans said, hey, look, I want to be back. You also need to make sure I have a quarterback who will get me the ball. And Baker Mayfield is good at throwing jump balls to Mike Evans. But I would have said probably $5 million less than this. I'm surprised. And I even thought 20 or 21 probably would have been a little rich for the Chiefs.
Yes.
But 26, to me, that says they were never actually in it. Because if that's the going rate to keep him, I can only imagine what would have cost to take him away from Tampa.
What it says more broadly to me is teams are going to throw some money around this free agent period. There are going to be some big dollar amounts that are going to make it for players who are, I think, more marginal players than Mike Evans. Like, I don't know who this year's Christian Kirk is going to be, but somebody.
Gabe Davis.
Oh, yeah. It's
I'll tell
definitely
you
going to be
right now, it's Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis is going to get a contract that's going to make her head spin.
And, like, totally undeservedly so. Like, at the very least, Christian Kirk, you could talk yourself into, well, I didn't really watch a lot of Cardinals football. Like, maybe he's better than I remembered. The Bills run CBS on the Jim Nantz, Tony Romo window like 9 times this year. And the other games were all primetime. Like, we've all seen Gabe Davis. We've seen the film. We know those stories. There's a good class of free agent. Well, not a good. It's a very top-heavy group of free agent wide receivers this year. Like T. Higgins, he's getting franchise tagged. I would not be surprised at all if he gets traded, though. I would not be shocked one bit if that's a tag and trade, get a decent draft pick, take a new wide receiver because your number one is Jamar Chase. You're working to keep him long-term. Would not be surprised at all by a trade there. But think of the other best free agent wide receivers available now that Mike Evans has a new contract at that kind of number. I love Michael Pittman. I was just telling you, Spencer, the other day, I'm a big fan of Michael Pittman's game. If Indy does not franchise tag him, he is going to get paid. Mid-20s, great route runner, good hands.
Do you think he gets similar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess what my second question is this is the market-setting deal then at wide receiver?
For this group, I would say yes. I would definitely say yes. I think Calvin Ridley will be in that same discussion because
Calvin Ridley at $25 million a year?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I would be surprised in the sense I don't associate Calvin Ridley with being a $25 million a year player.
Okay.
But if that's the money that's out there for wide receivers, if that's the going rate, if this is the market that we're setting for wide receivers, then yeah, maybe Calvin Ridley does get that because he's young. He's a deep threat. There's still some potential there. He didn't play that year because of the gambling suspension. So there's a little less tread on his tires or wear on his tires than maybe for some other wide receivers that are free agents. But what this also tells me is that these are not waters that the Chiefs are going to be swimming in.
No.
When it comes to acquiring wide receiver help, I don't think any of the even second tier free agent wide receivers, if the top tier guys are getting $20 million average annual value, I don't think that the Chiefs are going to be able to do a deal like that for a Michael Pittman or a Calvin Ridley. I think that became even more far-fetched upon seeing what Mike Evans got today.
Yeah, I'm right there 100% with you. I'm looking right now at the teams that have the most cap space. This is according to Spotrac, and teams that could use wide receiver help, certainly. Like right now, do you know who has the most cap space in the league?
The Patriots.
No, they're
What?
number 2. I can't believe you didn't get this right.
No, I swore I saw on Twitter on Friday after whatever they did, they have opened up and have the most above the Commanders. That's what I had seen.
You know what? It's 2 different places have 2 different amounts. According to Over the Cap, it's the Patriots. According to Spotrac, it is the Commanders, which tells us that some move was made at some point that someone's not tracking. So the Commanders are either 1 or 2. The Patriots are either 1 or 2.
I think it has to do with the Nick Gates and how much money is
Probably.
actually going to be on the cap
Probably.
versus what they're saving.
But the Titans, the Bears, the Colts, well, the Colts with that much money, they might as well just franchise tag Michael Pittman. I would do that if I was them. Houston, Detroit, Cincy, Arizona, Las Vegas, like many of those teams could use a wide receiver this year. You tell me that the Raiders, it might not be Al Davis. There's still a Davis who owns that team, though. You're not telling me they're not going to spend big money on a flashy free agent addition wide receiver?
Calvin Ridley, you are an Oakland
jar. No, even better. Calvin Ridley, Mr. Suspended for a year for gambling. You are a Las Vegas Raider.
No, that's perfect.
Roger Goodell got to step in at that point.
Yeah,
And say, no. We're Chris Pauling this. No.
They're going to put a bug in his phone that won't let him download DraftKings, the whole thing.
Getting that, what is Jitterbug Wireless or whatever. Firefly Wireless doesn't allow
Give him a flip phone.
Yeah, no apps
you can
on
play,
that phone.
You can play for the Raiders, but you're using this Nokia brick phone from 2002.
You even have this, though, and this was just reported, I think, within the last 2 hours. I saw it from even longer ago than that, but it was from this morning, from the Boston Globe. Andrew Callahan, who covers the Patriots for Boston Herald, excuse me. Kendrick Bourne has been offered a new contract from the New England Patriots. I would imagine the Patriots, again, with tons of cap space, as we just pointed out, they can make a competitive offer to keep a guy that they clearly like if they've offered him a deal ahead of free agency. That already now makes it more challenging to say, okay, what about that caliber of wide receiver? That's a player I thought would be an awesome fit for this Chiefs offense. You might not be able to make a huge offer even for that guy. So you're talking about really finding, 1 year fill-in kind of wide. Like suddenly you go from talking about Mike Evans to Kendrick Bourne to, you wanted a speed threat? What do you think of Devin Duvernay? Like, that is suddenly the kind of water you might be treading in if you're the Kansas City Chiefs here, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No,
it probably makes it more likely you can keep both Snead and Jones.
Yeah, that's, I think, pretty obviously what the priority is. I think it was Adam Schefter was on with somebody today. It might have been McAfee. Yeah, it was McAfee. And said that right now the Chiefs would be surprised if they don't get something done with Chris Jones before the start of the new league year and the start of the legal tampering period. That tells me that's all Kansas City's eggs are in that particular basket. And again, we've talked about this. We talked about it at length last week. We've really kind of talked about it at length since the season ended, that it makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs to focus on taking care of their own guys with whatever salary cap room they have to maneuver, and then being able to add on the margins in a way that they did really successfully last year. The problem with adding on the margin at wide receiver is we've seen what that looks like for the Chiefs, and that has looked like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Although, I mean, he was a multi-year deal guy. That was somebody they really prioritized.
They gave 3 years to him.
Yeah, they prioritized him. But it means guys like Justin Watson. It means guys like Richie James. And that's not super exciting. But can the Chiefs win the Super Bowl doing that?
Yeah.
Like, you know the answer to that question.
No, you do.
It may be aggravating in the short term to feel like, man, imagine a guy of Michael Pittman's caliber, or Curtis Samuel, your guy from Washington, Spencer, or like a guy like Tyler Lockett if he hit the market. If the Seahawks end up releasing a Tyler Lockett, man, imagine a guy like that. This offense catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. I don't know that they're going to have the room to maneuver and bring in a guy of that caliber. But we also know they don't really need to.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you can live with that. And I mean, you want to talk about a luxury to be able to say we don't need a star in that position, especially considering you expect Rashee Rice to be even better next year than he was this year, because, I mean, progression is not linear, but you would expect a guy who was playing that well by the end of the year is probably only going to take a step forward. And look, frankly, there are examples around the league where you can find offensive success without having exclusively, veteran guys. And I'll use my favorite team as an example. Green Bay, 6 wide receivers by year's end who were all within their first 2 years. All of them. Green Bay, in the back half of the season, had a top 5 offense in the NFL and had really good quarterback play. And I love Jordan Love. You know who's better than that? Patrick Mahomes. And Andy Reid, while historically has a very difficult wide receiver playbook to understand. I mean, you've got to know everything. You have to know your routes. You have to know everyone else's routes. You have to know the progression. You have to know every defensive alignment. You need to know the blocking assignment for everything. It is a very complex system for wide receivers that Andy Reid has developed, that Andy Reid and this offense run. But maybe you just live with drafting one guy. Maybe you draft 2. Maybe that's the move. Maybe you draft a guy in the top 2 rounds, you trade back, get an extra pick late, use a 6th or a 7th on a wide receiver, and you say, that's it. We're done. We're good. And you go with Rashee Rice, 2 rookies, Justin Watson. And that's, am I missing anyone who's still under contract?
Tony, technically, unless they cut him.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney. Sky Moore is technically under contract still. And you sign a guy during camp. Like what's the equivalent of Richie James? I know he was signed in March last year, but still, I mean, what's the equivalent of signing a guy like that?
You bring in somebody like that, alternately, you can look at that as saying, oh, we're looking for this year's wide receiver version of Mike Edwards.
Or, a name that I would be fascinated in, genuinely fascinated. He's a free agent again after he was only on a 1-year deal. Do you remember who was the last guy out in the wide receiver room last camp?
Oh,
can you remember his name?
He had 3 names.
Yes, he did.
I'm going to get it wrong. Amir Smith-Marset.
You got to call him, right?
Yeah.
He's a restricted free agent. I can't imagine Carolina brings him back. I don't know why Carolina wouldn't bring back anyone who wasn't nailed down at this point.
What about
you just bring him into camp.
What about Byron Pringle?
Former Chief.
He's a free agent.
I mean, those are the kinds of players that we're talking about. I don't know that they would bring Pringle back. I don't know that they would go after Amir Smith-Marset, bring him back. But those are the kind of players we're talking about here, where you're going to be looking for fill out the roster kinds of players, like the lesser St. Brown. Like maybe EQ comes in on $1.5 million a year or something for a 1-year contract.
Spot Track, which I just found this. I've been looking for a couple weeks. They have Curtis Samuel's market value around the same of what he got in 2023, so around 10 to 11.
Yeah, and that might be too rich for the Chiefs' blood at this point. It really might be.
I think that number goes up, though, with the number that Mike Evans just signed for.
Probably true.
Not that Curtis Samuel is on the level of a Mike Evans, but I certainly
rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, every wide receiver in the league who has a chance to cash in this offseason, like they saw that Mike Evans number and saw dollar signs. They pulled out their phones or booted up their laptops and they Googled how to buy a yacht.
One interesting note here. The outside of the wide receiver group, Ian Rappaport reporting that right now the Dolphins have decided they will not franchise tag Christian Wilkins. That's another defensive tackle who's going to be out there. Once again, and I always believe this, get your deals done with your guys as quickly as possible. Like, does Christian Wilkins impact what Chris Jones is going to make from the Chiefs? Probably not. But what if New England says, you know what? We're going to give him a buttload. We are going to just write a buttload on the contract, and we're going to hand it to Christian Wilkins and his agent, and he is going to sign for that. And suddenly, the defensive tackle market, which we thought was going to be not depressed, but a little bit lower with Justin Madubuike probably going back to Baltimore, all of a sudden there's a huge swell there. And then Chris Jones says, well, hold on now. I'm better than Christian Wilkins. You know I'm better than him. I know I'm better than him. My agency, the fans, they all know I'm better than him, and he got that. Let's go. Pay up. I know he's younger than me, but pay up. No one else has numbers like I do. You're going to have to pay me a little bit more. To me, this says you have to get Chris Jones done, and you have to get it done. I assume a deal will get done for what it's worth. You have a week. You have 1 week or, just over 6 days at this point before quote unquote legal tampering begins. The discussion window. You got to get a deal done in that window, because if Jones is able to get to free agency and something is not done, it is, I think, going to hurt the Chiefs, both monetarily and in terms of just making sure they do get something done with Chris Jones. So you've got a week to do that. And again, get it done as quickly as possible so other factors outside of your control are not influencing what you then owe the guy, because that will happen. Got to avoid that as much as possible. I'm very curious what a deal for Chris Jones looks like. I'm very curious what the Chiefs still feel like capable of doing or comfortable doing in free agency, because there's not a lot of space. It opens up if they trade L'Jarius Sneed, but if you say, hey, the best options for wide receiver aren't out there, maybe you just say, we'll keep Sneed. Maybe that ends up being the option. I do think at this point, and I told you guys last week, I thought that a trade was the more likely outcome. I would order it right now. Trade, franchise tag year, long-term extension. I do not think L'Jarius Sneed will be in Kansas City more than one more year at the most.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. I don't think they would have told him, go explore your options and give the publicized permission to seek a trade if they themselves did not feel like that was, if not the most likely outcome, a likely outcome.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Did you see the report today, by the way, that said, I got to go find out where this came from. But I did see this on Twitter. The belief that a second-round pick would be enough to trade for L'Jarius Sneed.
I did not see that.
This is from Ari Mirov of the 33rd team. So, I don't know. We'll see. I would ask for more than just a second-round pick, to be honest with you. I'm the Kansas City Chiefs for a player of that caliber.
If I'm trading a Pro Bowler, and I'm trading a guy who should have been an All-Pro, and I'm trading that player to a team that thinks they're going to get a long-term extension done with him, I'm not taking just a second-round pick. No
way. Absolutely no way. Coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk, we'll get to a little high school hoops from the weekend. State tournaments are set. We'll tell you who from our area is going on to the state tournaments and then what the rest of the brackets look like. We'll also talk some K-State later on this hour. We're just getting started on this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting started on 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski, Spencer Dupuis, Dan Lucero here with you in studio today. Coming up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and hopefully Saturday, we are going to have high school state basketball coverage for you right here on 580 WIBW on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. We will cover as many games as we possibly can. I know everybody asks us this question. I've already been asked this question so far this year. We know the format has changed in recent years for our coverage here on 580 WIBW of the state tournament, but we are going to get you as many games as we possibly can on Wednesday and Thursday for the opening round games. I am of the belief we are going to have at least a handful of games coming up Friday for the semifinals as well, and I think we've got some good chances of some championship caliber teams as well this year. Anything can happen at the state tournament, but we are going to have coverage from 5A. Dan will be there in Emporia. Spencer's going to be at 3A in Hutchinson. A lot of county and area talent at both of those sites. We are also going to have coverage. Our pal Greg Akagi is going to be with you from Wichita and Salina back and forth this week. So we will have coverage from all across the state as best as we can over the next few days. All in all, I was running through the list earlier today. I think we got really good representation from Topeka, obviously Shawnee County with the Silver Lake girls making it, and really just all of Northeast Kansas and the pigskin and hoops coverage area, if you will, with who made it to state this year.
Yeah, we certainly did. If you count it as the 8 city schools plus Rossville and Silver Lake as our county teams, that's 20 teams, 10 boys, 10 girls, get 7 of them into state is pretty neat. So excited to track the progress of our local teams. Like you said, 5A, city is well represented. Highland Park and Shawnee Heights on the boys' side, 2 programs with really proud traditions, 6 state titles for Highland Park, 5 for Shawnee Heights in 10 total state trips. So they got a coin flip chance of winning the whole thing.
Yep.
Last time they did win the whole thing back in 2017. So Shawnee Heights boys and the Seaman girls, of course, back for the 5th time in 6 years in Class 5A. Washburn Rural girls have won 2 of the last 4 6A state championships, have played in the last 2 championship games. They are back to Wichita, pulled an upset win on the road over Wichita South in their sub-state finals. So they are back to state. Hayden's boys and girls. The girls, they've been ranked number 2 in Class 3A behind Silver Lake pretty much all season long, and they stampeded through their sub-state. Hayden boys, I'll tell you what, tremendous resilience for that group. They lost 12 straight games at one point this year, had some injuries to some really important veteran players, could have packed it in. No, tremendous fight for that group, and a double overtime win over the number 1 seed Sabetha, a really good Sabetha team,
really good
in their sub-state final. So Hayden, don't pay any attention to their overall record. They surely belong in Hutchinson. Hayden girls obviously going, as I mentioned, and then Silver Lake girls. Holy moly, what a team. Number 1 in Class 3A for
Unreal.
Virtually the entire season. And they've only played 2 games this season within 20 points. They have just been rolling. They've
crazy.
Got great guard play. They have a stud in the middle of Mackenzie McDaniel. It's a shame that Silver Lake and Hayden ended up on the same side of the bracket.
I know.
I would have loved to have seen that on Championship Saturday, because I think both of those teams are good enough to win it. We may get it on semifinal Friday. It will feel like a state championship game. I don't want to be disrespectful to the 2-time defending champs from Goodland or any of the other 3A teams in what is always a loaded field. 3A,
it's insane.
I know. We always, people look at the 3A, 2A, and the 1A classes and say, well, they got too many ranked teams in the same sub-states, and they should do it geographically. And I'm sympathetic to that argument, but those state tournaments always end up loaded anyway. And 3A girls is stacked this year. So, yeah, I won't say a de facto state championship game, but I suspect we will get Hayden and Silver Lake in a semifinal on Friday, and that will be an incredible game.
We're going to try to get Rick Peterson on the show tomorrow. We will not have regular 580 Sports Talk Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday this week because we've got state basketball coverage. So we're going to try to get Pistol in tomorrow to break down the brackets. I know last year we spent a lot of time talking about the depth of 3A in general, but especially for the girls, and then 5A on both sides. Right now, because you've seen a ton of high school basketball this year and a ton of schools in both of those classes, What would you say is the deepest class this year? Because I would say it's either of the 5As or 3A girls, if I had to put my guess on it.
Yeah, 5A boys and girls ended up trying to remember if it's I think the girls, like all 8 teams that qualified were state ranked teams. No, it's boys. All 8, and then 7 of the 8 in the girls side ended up being state ranked. Like, and the polls didn't fluctuate a whole lot throughout the season. In Class 5A, it was pretty clear who the cream of the crop was. You've got, two unbeaten teams, one in each class. Mays South on the boys side, veteran head coach Joe Jackson. He's won a state title at Wichita East. Andover with a familiar face on those sidelines. Hannah Alexander, who guided Topeka High to a couple of state Final Fours, including what I firmly believe would have been a championship run in 2020 had COVID not banged the state championship, the semifinals and the finals. So you've got unbeaten teams on either side. The defending champs are back on both sides. Andover on the boys' side. St. Thomas Aquinas back at state for a 30th consecutive year, looking for an 8th straight state championship. Obviously, the local presence of Seaman on the girls' side and Shawnee Heights and Highland Park on the boys' side, those are going to be really, really good tournaments, no doubt.
Yeah, really excited for what 5A is going to look like, both boys and girls' side. Big opportunities here for, specifically talking about 5A for 2 city teams in Highland Park's boys and Seaman's girls, who I know both ended last year not at all the ways they wanted to end it. Seaman fell at the St. James Academy in the opening round of the state tournament last year. Highland Park lost in the state semifinals to eventual champion Andover, and then just massacred Hutchinson in the 3rd place game. And I know Coach Mike Williams, I know those players from last year's team really thought they were the best team in the state. And to be completely honest with you, I still believe last year's Highland Park team was the best team in the state. They just happened to play their worst game in the second to last game of the year. That is a team, but those are both teams, and knowing both those head coaches too, they remember what happened last year. They remember what that felt like, and they know what it's going to take to get it done this year.
All kinds of narrative in that 5A tournament for the local schools. You mentioned Highland Park. They get Andover right off rip. They play the team that handed them their only loss last season, and that's a team, an Andover team that's they were great last year. They graduated 3 all-state players and continued to be excellent. They're well coached. They've got some size. They've got some shooting, and they're going to be a tough out, no doubt about it. But certainly Highland Park will be motivated in that particular matchup. Shawnee Heights boys get Piper, who they're obviously league mates in the UKC, played twice in the regular season, lost early, beat them in Tecumseh in the regular season finale, a game that allowed Shawnee Heights to split the league title with Piper. And, oh, by the way, who's Piper's coach? Steve Wallace, who coached Shawnee Heights to the 2017 5A state championship, the last time Shawnee Heights was at state. So all kinds of narrative there. Seaman girls getting a UKC opponent in round 1 in DeSoto. Seaman won both of those regular season games by a combined 8 points.
Wow.
Those were the only games DeSoto lost to Kansas teams this year. Their only other loss, they went 19-3. Their only other loss was to Lee Summit North out of Missouri. So if anybody's been close to Seaman in 5A this year, it's been DeSoto, and that's a first-round game. So, all kinds of narrative going into the state tournament in Emporia.
One other thing, can we mention? You and I texted it. We texted it in the group message that we all have. I was talking about it with Pistol at the Washburn game on Saturday. Kevin Bordwick is inevitable. I mean,
he did it again.
You roll the ball out there. He could pick, and this is not to discredit the athletes on the team, because Maddie Vickery and Zoe Canfield and Destiny Oaks and players who have been on that program for a long time. I don't mean to disrespect them at all. Give me any 5 girls anywhere in the state, put them on Kevin Bordwick's team, and I'll take whatever odds you give me of them making the state tournament. It is unbelievable what they're able to do year after year.
There have been times throughout this season where you kind of wondered, okay, like, is this the end of what's been not the end, but is this maybe
the down year,
a step backwards a little bit for this Washburn Rural program? Some losses along the way this year, some difficulty scoring in ways that they maybe haven't had in recent years. They finished the regular season with 2 straight losses. I saw their sub-state semifinal game. We carried it here on 580 when they played Wichita Northwest. And yes, they were overmatched athletically the Washburn Rural overmatched Wichita Northwest athletically, but watching that game, it was like, okay, yeah, they're locked in, like they're dialed.
Mhm.
And then they went down to Wichita and they beat Wichita South and controlled that game and finished strong. That was the one thing that I saw Wichita or Washburn Rural this year and wondered, are they as good a closing team? Because that's what Kevin's teams always do.
Oh, yeah.
They close. They, to borrow a phrase from our pal Mitch Holtis, they know how to put the hammer down.
Mhm.
That's what they do late in close games. This year, I have wondered, like, do they have that in them? Do they have that ability to put to find that extra gear and put a team away in the fourth quarter? They showed without a doubt that, yeah, that's still there. It's their time of year, and they're going to be a very tough out in 6A. Yes, they play Wichita Heights, who was the number 1 seed in the 6A West. They were to beat Wichita Heights this year.
I was going to say, what happened when those two teams played?
It was close. It was a tight one, but Washburn Rural beat them in the Capital City Classic semifinals. So certainly an opportunity ahead of Rural. Would not discount their ability to make another run in the 6A girls bracket.
That's going to be a blast. We've got a full day quadruple header action coming up on Wednesday from 2 until 10. We will also have a triple header 2 until 8 coming up on Thursday, and we'll get you as many semifinals and championship games as we can as well on Friday and Saturday. Plus, the Kansas High School Basketball State Tournament Scoreboard Show with Eric Peterson. Every night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we will have EP on the air bringing you the Scoreboard Show here on 580 WIBW and across the Kansas Information Network. Let's get to a break. From high school to college, K-State. Oof, ugly one against Cincinnati. Almost had it, but came up short in a big one. We'll break it all down next on 580 Sports Talk. One quick Chiefs note in news that we've known for a week. L'Jarius Sneed officially just got the franchise tag from the Chiefs. We've known. We knew that was coming. Although, an interesting note here from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, adding, and I just lost it here, The Chiefs have now officially franchise tagged L'Jarius Sneed, as they said they would. He has permission to speak with teams about a potential trade, making him an intriguing candidate to land elsewhere. If no trade, he may just play on the tag. Again, I'm going to give this about a 45. I'm going to give it a 50% chance of a trade, a 45% chance of playing on the tag, and a 5% chance of a new deal.
Yeah.
Especially knowing that the wide receiver market now is going to be more inflated than we expected. Maybe the Chiefs just say, you know what, we'll just ride with him again.
Yeah.
We know Spags loves him.
Yeah, we'll put him on the tag. We're not in a hurry to trade him.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be something that benefits both parties.
For sure. Oh, that's absolutely true. So, interesting little wrinkle there in the L'Jarius Sneed situation. Back to college hoops, as promised. K-State lost to Cincinnati on Saturday. A couple things that I pull away from this game. Number one, it is very hard to win on the road in the Big 12. We talked about that a bunch leading into the game. That being said, Cincinnati also had just lost 3 games in a row, 5 of 6 and 6 of 8. And in their previous 3 games had a home loss to Oklahoma State, which is, I'm pretty sure, starting Spencer at center right now. Like they're really, really bad. And they beat Cincinnati in Cincinnati. K-State fought hard. That's valuable. They had a chance. It didn't look like they were going to maybe pull it out. They had a chance till the very end. They were leading at the very end.
They had the ball in the lead inside a minute. And then, like, I don't know how to explain why they feel more comfortable in games where they're behind late than they do in games where they're ahead late. I don't know why that seems to be the case, but we talked about it in the context of the West Virginia game last week, where they were down 4 with a minute to go, and they just knew exactly what they wanted to do. Like, they said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to get back in the game, and they tied it, and they sent it to overtime, and they won in overtime. With the lead and the ball, a late clock situation once again became, hey, Tyler, just shoot it, man. Like, we're just going to stand around and one guy's going to set a screen. And like, obviously you hedge on that screen to make Tyler shoot over your big man because everybody in Fifth Third Arena knew what was coming. And Tyler missed the shot. And Cincinnati came down and they made their tough shot. Seamus Lukosius got enough. Boy, that guy is a K-State killer. Last year with Butler and this year with Cincinnati, man, he's had great games against K-State. They got, I thought, a decent contest on the shot. It was from way out. It was not like toes on the tape or anything like that. That's a tough shot. Guy made it. Tip your cap. But then go down and you got a chance to tie or regain lead, go win the game. And Tyler Perry just lost the basketball. And that was the other late clock play that K-State runs. Is, well, Tyler, see if you can get fouled. And that has worked. So has, I mean, that there's something to that, but I don't know that against Cincinnati with their size, as good as they are at protecting the rim with Bandago in the middle, that was the right course of action. I just thought that K-State did a good job to stay in touch. They did not let Cincinnati pull that game out to an 18-20 point lead where it would have been beyond them. It felt like they were down 13 the entire second half. But they never let it get worse than that. And they got some stops and they chipped away and got some good shots. And then Perry hits a really tough 3 to give them the lead. I just hated how they played their last 2 possessions. And they've been playing possessions in late clock and late game scenarios like that all year long. Yeah. And you would have thought they would come up with something a little more workable by now.
Is it a lack of trust? Is it a lack of shooters? I mean, how many times have we seen them dial up the Tyler Perry just go do something play?
I think, look, they are not the only team in the history of college basketball that has ever been overly reliant on, hero ball in the last seconds. If you've watched enough Big 12 basketball, I'm sure you can, off the top of your head, think about guys who, in late clock situations, played hero ball, sometimes to the benefit, but often to the detriment of their team. I'll just sit here. You want to remember some guys? Manu Lecomte at Baylor. Javon Carter at West Virginia. God. Eric Stevenson last year at West Virginia.
Yeah.
A lot of teams that aren't, the cream of the crop in the league will occasionally have a guy who they are overly reliant on to go and make a play.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler Perry, without having those point guard instincts, will get himself on an island where he's guarded by two guys, and there's just no way for him to get a good shot in that scenario. But it's also late in the clock, and nobody else is really moving to try and get open. And, I mean, you're not going to throw it into the big. Like, come on, let's be real. You're not throwing it into the big, got bad hands, and doesn't finish reliably around the rim. So, yeah, I just think it's kind of Perry. It's kind of on him, and he's made the play at times, but on Saturday night he did not. And now, like I mentioned at the top, that's 3 games this year that, man, if 2 of them go the other way, K-State's sitting real pretty.
Yep.
Right now. I think about the Texas Tech game where what's his name? Little guard Toussaint took 3 steps underneath the basket, made a tough layup in traffic, got the foul, and K-State loses by 1 because they didn't get a great shot on the other end because Perry got mugged.
Not great officiating.
No. There's a TCU game where Jameer Nelson Jr. hits a really tough shot at the end of the game to win that one. And then there's this game where Lukosius hits the 3 from like NBA range with a hand in his face with 9 seconds left. And that's the difference. I mean, that's how close that Kansas State is to being comfortably, maybe comfortably is an exaggeration, but they'd feel a lot better about their place on the bubble if 2 of those 3 games go differently. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes you don't get the rub of the green in those close games. Sometimes it's the other team that makes the big shots. And certainly K-State's won some close games themselves, like 12-7 overtime wins this year. So, I guess it cuts both ways. But it's disappointing because that was a winnable game, and Cincinnati scored 29 points off of K-State's turnovers. And K-State loose and sloppy with the basketball like they've been all season long. They didn't value the ball, and in the end, that is what cost them most dearly, was their inability to take good care of the basketball. And it's what happens when you have somebody who's not really a point guard playing all your point guard.
It does make me wonder, and it's not super relevant. Sorry, Spencer. I was just going to say, it makes me wonder what the future plan is at that spot for K-State. And I, last year going into this year, I told you that my biggest thing with Jerome Tang was figuring out, like, okay, we saw it work with this roster. He just took over and brought all these guys in. It was a one-time deal. It worked. Now I want to see what the development looks like. And things have been stunted due to the injuries and obviously the Naquan Tomlin situation too. I want to know what a true offseason of we have major needs looks like. Because there were needs after last year. You lose 2 All-Americans. Obviously you have needs.
Right.
But this year it is we've got legitimate flaws. We need to fill them.
Even the guys they missed on in the portal, I'm not sure would have filled the void of having a true point guard. Now, maybe David Castillo's that guy right off rip for K-State next year as a 5-star freshman. Yeah, but they need that guy. They need the playmaker, not just the shooter or the big shot maker. But they need the playmaker. They need the creator. They sorely missed that element this season.
You have 10 seconds, Spencer. What were you going to say?
It's all good. Go.
Okay. It is not
I
all
was
good
just agreeing with what he said.
For sure. Coming up in the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we'll move on to KU, which unsurprisingly lost to Baylor this weekend. Matt Verderame will join us. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly coming up on 580 Sports Talk. now, 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk getting underway here on 580 AM, 104.9 FM, online at 580WIBW.com, and also on YouTube at 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis joining you on the program today. You can be a part of the show as well, either in the comments on our video stream. Head over to youtube.com, search 580 Sports Talk, subscribe to the channel, and you can watch the YouTube stream there and hang out in the comment section. You can also find the video streaming on our website, 580WIBW.com, and on the WIBW News Facebook page, plus 580 Sports Talk on Twitter. We'd also invite you to hang out with us on the Top City Metal Supply text line. That number is 785-272-9429. No more wasting money on metal pieces that leave you with unnecessary leftovers. Top City Metal will cut the exact lengths of aluminum, steel, and stainless steel that you need, tailored to your project's specifications. Start optimizing your budget with Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field, right here in the capital city. Again, 785-272-9429 is the number for the Top City Metal Supply text line. We'll talk to Matt Verderame a little bit later on this hour. We'll go around the NFL. We'll recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we'll get to KU's loss to Baylor here in just a moment as well. I was going to ask you really quickly regarding the L'Jarius Sneed, I don't know, news, I guess you can call. I mean, we knew this was happening for a week now.
The Chiefs making it official is what is news, I guess.
I made the comment about Ari Mirov's report that the Chiefs would probably be able to get a second rounder for him. I feel like they could get a first. Like, if you look at the back part of the draft, teams that need cornerback help, like, what about Detroit? Detroit picks 28th. They need a cornerback desperately.
Philadelphia.
You don't think Philly would be willing to part with a first to make that happen? Like, Green Bay only has one first, but has 2 picks in the 40s in the second round and 5 total in the first 3 rounds. I mean, second and a third might not be the best group you could get, but Green Bay, Brian Gutekunst has said, I'll make a move. Like, we've got picks. We'll make a move for a veteran if we think it's a good deal. Like, I think the Chiefs can get more than just a second-round pick for L'Jarius Sneed if they end up going that route. You don't get corners like that for nothing very often, except for when the Chiefs literally got Travarius Ward for nothing when they traded Parker.
Commanders didn't need a quarterback so bad.
Would you say you'd make a move for him?
I would make a move for him, especially because Kendall Fuller's probably not coming back. His contract is up. So you really need a guy.
They got their second round, right? They have their second round pick?
Yeah.
Who couldn't use a corner?
Like, yeah, especially one that, again, played at the level that L'Jarius Sneed played at this last year.
Yeah.
But not only, like, if there's, because Sneed's obviously a part of this process, he's not going to be a rental player, and the Chiefs won't take anything less than what he's offered. When you mentioned Rappaport's report said that he'd play on the tag, like, do we feel comfortable he'd play on the tag? Because I think the Chiefs might be comfortable letting him play on the tag.
They might.
Yeah.
They might be totally fine with that. It's a great question. This feels like a weird situation. Like, they're more halfway between wanting to keep him and wanting to let him go than they've been with anyone else. Even Orlando Brown. When they had Orlando Brown play on the tag, it really did feel like they almost felt like they had to. Like, okay, fine, well, you play on the tag, whatever. Like, that relationship always felt kind of weird. It feels more positive with L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know how it's going to end up going. Get something done with Chris Jones. That's what you have to get done first.
Yeah,
once that is done, you can move on to everything else.
Adam Schefter today on the Pat McAfee show said the deal isn't done yet, but he'd be surprised if it didn't get done, referring to Chris Jones and the Chiefs.
I'm in the same boat. Just get it done quicker so you might save a couple bucks before Christian Wilkins gets his deal leaving Miami. As for college basketball, mentioned it a moment ago, wanted to get to the KU loss to Baylor. This is the first time in 3 full years that KU has been outside the top 10 in the AP poll. I would like to invite everyone to take a moment to step back. And I can't say it because I'm on the radio and the FCC will come for all of my possessions if I do. You can say what the bleep to yourself, though. 3 straight years you've been in the top 10 nonstop with a national championship. Like, I've told you this before, and I know this year is frustrating, and I know losing to Baylor on the road is frustrating, and we'll get to some other stats here in a moment that are frustrating. Do not forget, these are the good old days, okay? Like, being only 14th in the country after having the worst conference record you have had since 1989. And this is bad. This isn't down. This is bad. Like, take a moment and appreciate that. Be frustrated. I'm not telling you not to be, but appreciate the fact that this is the bad year. Is 7 conference losses with a week to go. That's bad. Like, that is, oh my God, terrible. That's where this program is. So appreciate that for a moment. That being said, this is the worst regular season in conference play by number of losses since Roy Williams' first year in 1988, 1989. You know what else was going on in 1988, 1989 for Kansas basketball?
Lots of sanctions.
Lots
of sanctions. Yeah.
From the Larry Brown era.
You have to go back to late stage Ted Owens to find a season that was not hampered by NCAA sanctions. And I guess even this one is a little there. Aren't they still down scholarships from the DeSosa thing?
2.
Yeah.
Down 2 scholarships.
So I guess in a matter of speaking.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. Maybe you use one of those for one of those guys who said they wanted to come to KU. You didn't pursue. Again, I don't need to rehash it at the moment because I've been over it before. There is one particular player who never should have been recruited, who screwed up the entire roster building of this year. That was Arterio Morris. That was a complete flub by the program.
Yeah.
And you're left now with a 5-player lineup.
Frankly, Bill Self's not taking enough heat for that.
Like, I agree.
And not just in the sense of the kind of person he willingly brought on to campus in Arterio Morris, like certified capital B,
bad guy,
capital G, bad guy.
Yep.
To take that chance knowing that that's what could happen, and then it does blow up in your face, and this is the roster you're left with. Like, when Kansas is eliminated from the tournament, and it sure seems like a lot of KU fans, I'm not saying all KU fans, but it sure seems like a lot of KU fans are treating a first weekend exit from the NCAA tournament as sort of a fait accompli at this point. Like, yeah, we'll get in, we'll be a 3 or a 4, and we'll lose to a 5 or a 6. Like, if we don't get sniped by a 14 having a big night from 3. Like, that's kind of where I think there are a lot of KU fans whose heads are there. And that will be despite having a starting 5 that is as good as any starting 5 that KU has had in the Self era, really, with 2 guys who played like first-team All-Americans. There is no one to blame for this but Bill Self. He made the wrong call, and his roster looks like this, and they have no depth, and they have no shooting, and that is his fault. That is his fault.
No, it's true. It's true. And if I am willing to say that as someone who has defended, I mean, Bill Self doesn't need me to defend him. He's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport and has won 2 national titles, the Final Four,
and
all
those
that.
things are all still true, and those banners still hang forever. But this
is a botch job.
Yes,
he
screwed this up. Bill Self has to look in the mirror as to what has gone wrong, why you're not a factor in the Big 12 title race, why you're not going to be a top seed or a number 2 seed.
You know, that actually raises an interesting point. And I only know Bill Self vaguely in a from a fan perspective and in a working relationship in the sense that I go to the press conferences and have traveled with the team. If you've noticed, though, and we got early in the season, we got they're soft, we're not tough enough yet. You got that stuff. And you had today, he just a little bit ago was talking about how, someone made a comparison between KU and the Chiefs. And he said, well, the difference, I see the comparison, but at the same time, they've won it before. This team has a long way to go. We've barely started, all the regular Bill Self stuff. Have you also noticed, though, in a lot of post games this year, there's been a lot less, I don't want to say like fire, because I don't think it's that, but there's been a lot more willingness to say, like, we've got our limitations. We're still really good at our best. The season doesn't really start till March with this program. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, he said, in fact, the other night after the loss, or other day after the loss, he said, I'm not discouraged, but I'm not encouraged after.
He said, I think it was, he was less discouraged.
Less discouraged.
Than he'd been. And, like, on the one hand, I kind of get where he's coming from, because I don't think KU, outside of about a 3-minute stretch midway through the second half where they got loose with the ball and they let Baylor build a double-digit lead that was a bridge too far to come back from. KU's not a good comeback team because they don't shoot threes. Like, at the end of the day, you get KU in a hole, that's a problem because KU's not going to 3-ball their way back into a game. They're not built to do that. And especially against a team who can 3-ball you like Baylor can. That's true in a vacuum. Like if you look at that game on Saturday, KU played all right. They had some stretches where they didn't play great, but I didn't think they played badly. Baylor made a lot of shots. They made more threes than KU because, again, that is where KU is limited. And they end up squeaking out a, 6-point win at home. Like, you lose by 6 to a top 10 team or top 15 team on the road in league play. That is nobody's idea of a bad loss for Kansas, unless you were up like 25 and you tricked it off. But there's nobody's idea of a bad loss in a vacuum. But it does stand out when you look at it as a season-long sort of pattern of, not behavior, but a pattern of speaking from Bill Self after games. Yeah, I think he knows exactly who his team is, and he knows there's no, improving to be done at this stage. They're not all of a sudden going to start shooting 40% from three. They have played better on the defensive end down the stretch, which is an intriguing development. In CJ Moore's article today, his last top 25 of the regular season, he pointed out that since McCullough got hurt, KU's actually had the 3rd-ranked defense in the country. They've played really well on the defensive end down the stretch. That's an encouraging development. They're going to have to be really good on defense because, again, they are, even as efficient as they can be offensively from 2, they are limited offensively because it's a math problem. 3 is greater than 2. I mean, and their losses last week were the result of math.
Well, go to the BYU game. KU got outscored by 30 from 3, and they lose a 9-point game. Was it 9? Was that the final? Whatever the final number was. It was a very competitive game. You get outscored by 30 in one facet of the game, whether that is from the 3-point arc, whether that is points off turnovers, whether that's bench points, whatever. It is hard to come back from that much of a lopsided category. And that is why I wonder with these Bill Self comments, if he might feel the same way that I do. And he's obviously closer to the situation, but I know what this team is. They're not going to shoot the 3 very well. The fact that they are playing better defensively, it feels kind of like a Ewing theory sort of thing that, we can't rely on Kevin McCullough now to be our all-world defender. We got to figure something out to replace him. That's what it says to me. They're playing better defense. They can play good defense. Yeah. And at their best, again, they can and have beaten anybody. Nobody has a group of 4 wins better than KU this year. No one.
No, that's true. They beat the team that I think is by some distance the best team in the country in UConn.
Beat Tennessee.
Beat Kentucky.
Which can score like an NBA team.
And
beat Houston.
Beat Houston convincingly. And that was at Allen Fieldhouse. We're going to see how it looks on the other side. Houston, by the way, big loss injury-wise. JoJo Douglas, probably out for the year, going to need foot surgery. That's a big loss to that Houston front court because they're already not real big. And, it's a funny thing because I think Houston's really good. I think KU actually matches up with them really well because what Houston isn't going to do unless Cryer goes ballistic is 3 you to
kill you from 3.
They don't have shooters like that. They're okay, but they're not a great shooting team. The way you beat KU, light it up from the 3-point arc because KU can't match that. KU at one point in that game against Baylor, I think it was midway through the second half, they were shooting 65%.
Yeah.
You shoot 65%, that's unreal. They were losing the game because they'd made 1 3 and Baylor had made 7. It's a math problem at this stage. They are one guy, and they just, other than with Hunter, who slam dunk, he's going to be a first-team All-American. They just misfired in the transfer portal. So it sort of feels like if you follow junior college basketball, you have a bad recruiting class in JUCO, you pick the wrong guys to give scholarships to, and you have a down year. You can be a great program, but you pick the wrong guys to commit to give those scholarships to, and it throws you off, and there's no rescuing it.
I think, there's a couple different ways to split this up, and I keep coming back to the same name. If Bill Self had picked Harrison Ingram instead of Arterio Morris, KU is a top team this year?
5.
12.5 points. Over 9 rebounds a game, shooting 44% from the floor.
And length on the wing.
And he is shooting 39.5% from 3.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. They don't have anybody doing that.
And granted,
Furphy did it for about a month. That's the other thing, too. that has started to happen is it looks like Furphy's hitting a bit of a wall. And
he's he's an international freshman who didn't get onto campus till the summer. That's not a surprise.
No, it's not.
And that's why it's so frustrating, because you need to rely on guys who understandably are hitting a wall.
Yeah, which then puts you into perspective. He might be back next year.
I don't think he's coming back.
You don't think so?
I think
even though he's hit a wall?
Johnny Furphy's going to be a lottery pick. I don't think he's coming back.
I
think he should come back, but I think somebody is going to say you're a lottery pick, and he's going to go be a lottery pick. Wouldn't you?
I believe he will leave. I am holding out. I'm not 100% on that. I am holding out hope that he comes back. I would say I'm like 65-35, which granted is also lower than I would have given Kevin McCullough last year when I was at about 98.2% that he was leaving.
Where were you on Grady Dick? Were you like 100? He was a one and done all the way?
150 to -50. That
okay.
one.
All right.
I was told after the fact that was a done deal when he committed. If this season goes well, I'm one and done. I knew by about the turn of the year that he was gone.
I think in some years Johnny Furphy would no doubt come back.
Mm-hmm.
This is the worst NBA draft in a generation. Somebody's going to take him in the lottery.
Quite literally a full generation. The one thing I am clinging to, and if this is just me coping, that's fine. I am always willing to admit sometimes I'm just being a coping homer. I am the first to admit that. Eric Bossy, who is better at covering college hoops recruiting and transfers than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He on over at fog.net with Michael Swain a week or two ago said, I know what the draft projections say. I know how bad this year's draft is. The one thing is that international players have a very different view of going to the NBA and development and the one and done thing than US born players. They just do. And for Johnny specifically, the fact that he was such a late exploder on the recruiting scene, that might convince him, along with the fact he can actually make NIL money next year when they go internationally, that might convince him to stick around. But it is going to be tough when the draw is you might go 11th in the NBA draft. It'll be tough, but that's the argument if you think he's going to stick around. Again, I don't think it's likely. I'm hoping that it does happen. Real quick, you want to get some breaking news here?
Yeah.
I want your perspective specifically on this. Russell Wilson's being cut by the Denver Broncos. I want your perspective. We knew this was going to happen. This is obvious. The Broncos already owe him a ton of money, but they are going to save $37 million by cutting him now. That would have been guaranteed. He's your favorite quarterback on your least favorite team.
Yeah, it's been a funny relationship these last couple of years. $85 million in dead money due to Russell Wilson. That's obviously not all absorbed in one fell swoop.
That's almost as much cap space as the Patriots have. They have the most cap space in the league at like $95 million. This is almost as much as that.
So procedurally, I think he's going to have to be a post June 1 cut. He's going to kind of linger sort of on their books until after June 1st, and then they can cut him, and that's going to ease their burden a little bit. And then Wilson's guaranteed the money, so he could sign for the league minimum somewhere, and he's still going to make that $37 million. It's just how much do the Broncos owe? How much does the team signing him owe? The statement from the Broncos, from George Payton, their general manager, and their head coach, Sean Payton, no relation. We spoke with Russell Wilson today to inform him of his release after the start of the league year. On behalf of the Broncos, we thank Russell for his contributions and dedication to our team and community while wishing him the best as he continues his career. As we move forward, we are focused on building the strongest team possible for the 2024 season and beyond. We are excited to improve this offseason. We'll have the flexibility to get better through the draft and free agency. Russell Wilson obviously is past his prime, past his athletic prime. He is no longer the caliber of player that he was through the mid-2010s when he was, even if he famously never received an MVP vote, he was in those conversations as a player. I think that version of Russell Wilson is not coming back. He was saddled with maybe the worst one-year head coach in the history of the National Football League in his first year in Denver. In his second year, he had to work with a head coach that didn't want him. And you can't be a my way or the highway, my offense or the highway coach with Russell Wilson. It just doesn't work.
Who's kind of a my way or the highway quarterback.
A little bit.
Just by physical restriction more than anything.
Yes, physical restriction and what he's comfortable with and what he succeeds with. You have to be willing to run the Russell Wilson offense, not the Sean Payton offense, not the Nathaniel Hackett offense. Whatever your idea of offense is, when Russell Wilson is your quarterback, you're going to have to bend to the things that he does well and put him in position to do those things. You have to use his legs. You have to use him in play action. You've got to let him cut it loose, throw the deep ball. It was never going to work in Denver after that disastrous first season that poisoned the well. I don't know where it goes from here for Russell Wilson. I hope there's a renaissance. I hope there's at least 1 year where he can turn back the clock, because I think that helps his Canton case. And I think that's a really, like, if he never plays another game, I think that's an argument I will have to recuse myself from, because I am extremely biased. But I hope that he does have at least 1 or maybe 2 renaissance years left where he is put in a better position to succeed with an organization that actually, I mean, you could argue that the Broncos never really wanted him in the first place. It was the thing they had to do is go get a quarterback, and they wanted Aaron Rodgers, and they struck out.
Yep.
And Russell Wilson was always plan B. And that sucks. That had to suck for Russell Wilson.
I'm sure it did.
In a variety of different ways. So with a fresh start somewhere, maybe there's some more good football left in Russ's career. I kind of hope there is.
Atlanta has been tied to everyone, but we've talked about this before. I still think Kirk Cousins makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. But in terms of where does Russell Wilson fit the best, of the teams that need a quarterback, it is the Falcons. Because you've got the go up and get it guys. You've got vertical threats. You've
and
got
the
a good
running
run
game. That's the biggest thing.
A good line.
The running game and the play action game are the things that are going to really set up Russell Wilson to have the most amount of success. And that's the other thing, too. Denver never really got the running game going the way they needed to, because Javonte Williams' knee exploded. And he came back last year as kind of a shell of himself. And maybe moving forward, there's good football ahead for Javonte Williams after a year and change off of an ACL. But they never got that running game going the way they really needed to, the way that all of Russell Wilson's best teams. It sounds ridiculous to say that about a quarterback. Like, well, you got to have a good running game around him. Well, the better you run the ball, the better you are in play action. And Russell Wilson is great in play action when you give him a legitimate chance to set it up.
Yeah, and I don't think Pittsburgh makes any sense. I mean, the kind of receivers they have, Arthur Smith's offense, like, that doesn't make sense to me. I know he said originally before he went to the Broncos that he was interested in the Raiders. That wouldn't make sense to me.
No, I don't see that either.
I don't see that happening. So we'll find out. I think he will start next year, though. I do. I will put that out there right now. I do think he will start next year.
I think Atlanta makes a whole lot of sense.
And you can get him cheaper than Cousins.
Yes, you can.
You certainly can get him cheaper than Cousins.
And he's healthy. Like, that's the thing about Russell Wilson. Like, is he diminished athletically to an extent? Absolutely. But he's not coming off a torn Achilles.
No, that's very true. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly up next. Then we'll talk to Matt Verderame coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. Time to recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. I'll roll with my good here first. Want to give a shout out to the Washburn women this weekend. Doubleheader for the Turnpike Tussle on Saturday unfortunately ended on a sour note with the Washburn men falling to Emporia. But man, the Washburn women, they've been through a lot this year. It has been a trying season for Laura Westling's group. They're so young, but it was one of the best players in the conference who just took over at the end of the game, Aubrey Dewey. Washburn trailed by 13 points late in the third quarter, surged back, took the game to overtime, won it in overtime. Really emotional day, I know, for Aubrey Dewey, for Mackenzie Gamble, for Lakin Schiefrick, the three seniors for that Washburn team. Really happy for them that they got to end their home careers on a high note. And just thrilled for them, thrilled for that team. And hopefully they can continue that momentum coming up Wednesday in Kansas City when they open the MIAA tournament. The men, by the way, still have a lot to play for, too. They will open the MIAA tournament for their sake on Friday.
Good for me. I try not to overdo it when it comes to my favorite teams because I know that my favorite teams are not y'all's favorite teams, and I try not to overdo that. But if they're healthy, the Denver Nuggets are winning another NBA championship this summer, and they own the Los Angeles Lakers. And I just love saying that out loud. The Nuggets own the Lakers. They've beaten them 8 straight times. The Lakers can't do anything with them. They can't guard Jokic because nobody can guard Jokic, and the Lakers can't guard Jamal Murray because they tried doing it with Austin Reeves. And Austin Reeves is a bum and a half on the defensive end. And they just can't stop the Nuggets late in games. I watched it Saturday night. It was glorious. I really, really enjoyed it.
Can I pander to you for a second?
Yes, please.
Best player in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes, and his team, the Chiefs, is the best team in the league. Nikola Jokic, best player in the NBA. His team is the Denver Nuggets. Best player in the world, reigning champions, clearly is just waiting to turn it on at the right time and owns the team that everyone nationally just tries to make into a bigger deal than they are. In the NFL, it's Buffalo. In the NBA, it's the Lakers.
Okay. Are you saying the Nuggets are the NBA Chiefs?
Right now, yeah. They're the best team in the league.
Lot of parallels. How about that?
I mean, Boston's really good. They haven't done it. Like Jason Tatum, awesome.
No,
they haven't done it.
Now, and I don't think I think their coach has like tapioca pudding for brains in
I don't think he's a good coach
late
either.
and close games. So like I look forward to Michael Malone. Actually, let's be honest. I look forward to Eric Spoelstra out coaching Joe Mazzulla in the playoffs again. Boston's not going to the finals. I'll say it right now. I know they got all the talent.
Spicy.
Boston is not going to the NBA finals.
You have a good?
Yes, finally got my haircut this weekend.
I was going to say,
feel like a new man because I waited just a little bit too long to get a haircut, and it was sticking out everywhere, and it was really annoying. So that was good. Also ran into Jake LeBon at the Sam's Club this weekend. Talked to him for a few minutes.
How was that? How's Jake doing?
He's doing good.
Good.
He seemed to be a lot happier than having to be at a court all day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Bad is actually a sad for me this weekend. Chris Mortensen passed away at 72 years old. 8-year battle with stage 4 throat cancer. Incredible that he worked as long as he did. Tributes from all over the sports world were pouring in from him. I don't know if you saw Daniel Jeremiah talking about him on the NFL Network at the Combine this weekend. Just really sad, and a lot of people watched a lot of hours of Chris Mortensen on their TVs for a long time. So best wishes to his family, condolences to them, and rest in peace to one of the best NFL reporters of all time, Chris Mortensen.
Yeah, very sad news. My bad was the final minute of K-State Cincinnati. Tyler, dude, do something else. Have somebody else come and set a screen so he's not trying to shoot over a 7-footer on that late game 3. Please try something else.
Bad for you?
Don't really have a bad. It's more of ugly. So
okay.
I'll wait around for you guys.
My ugly, and I teased this earlier, there's a small group, a vocal but small group of KU fans I've seen on Twitter who have said they're so frustrated with this being the worst Big 12 season that KU has had since it was still the Big 8 that they sold their tickets to tomorrow night's Sunflower Showdown. Guys, you ain't beating the accusations from K-State fans that all the noise is just pumped in sound when you're selling your tickets because you had one down year. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this. It might be only like 5 people who are just obnoxious about it on social media. Don't do this, guys. Do not do this. Please, I'm begging you. Bad look. Go to the game. Anything for you, ugly-wise?
No. Pretty good weekend.
Spencer?
My ugly is that one of my favorite hockey players that's not Alex Ovechkin for the Capitals, his Capitals career seemingly came to an end on Saturday morning. Evgeny Kuznetsov, he scored the goal against the Penguins in 2018 that, as John Walton, their radio voice, said, the demons have been exorcised because they can never they can never beat the Penguins in the playoffs whenever they play them. And ultimately one of the best seasons the best season he ever had in 2018 to help them win the cup of Evgeny Kuznetsov. He's got some off the rink issues, I guess you would say, in his life, stemming back to a few years ago when he got suspended for cocaine usage in a video that came out.
Whoa.
He was in the NHLPA's program, basically. And he was waived and he was now sent to the AHL team, and the GM said they want a fresh start for him and for the team because of everything that's happened to him. So essentially, unfortunately, a drug has taken him out of the NHL.
That's sad to see. That'll do it for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Matt Verderame's up next here on 580 Sports Talk. Joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline is Matt Verderame. He covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated and SI.com. He is also the host of the Matt Verderame Show, a Chiefs-centric podcast. You can subscribe now on Matt's Patreon. And don't forget to follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, how was Indy?
It was good. I'm still recovering, I think, to some degree, but overall it was good. So no complaint.
Not going to ask for any, major secrets here, but from your conversations with agents and other reporters and team personnel, what were some of the prevailing storylines or some of the biggest things you came away from Indy thinking about or knowing after the last week?
I think from a national perspective, look, I think everybody believes that the Bears are going to be trading Fields here before free agency. The question is just to who and for what. It's generally believed the market's not that great. So is it a second round pick? Is it even worse than that? I don't know if the Bears would go for less than a second, but I don't think I have much choice. I think they're kind of short on leverage because everybody in the world thinks that they're going to take Caleb Boyd. So that's one thing. Another thing that happened today was there was some talk that Christian Wilkins was not going to get tagged, which is now I don't know if it's official, but it's been put out there multiple places that the Dolphins are not going to tag him. I think he becomes fascinating on the open market. He is a very good young player, and he is coming out in a year where, look, Matabike is not going to hit the market. He's going to get tagged or signed long-term, and we'll see what happens with Chris Jones. And on that front, with Jones, I do think that there is this expectation that he's going to get signed. I would say I think some of that is a little bit of groupthink at this point. Like, look, if you said to me, you got to bet your mortgage, I think they find a way to get it done. I also think that they've been charging at this wall for over a year, and we're still sitting here like this. So it's no guarantee.
Is there one side that's less willing to budge, whether that's Chris Jones and the Katz brothers or the Chiefs, or what do you think right now is the hang up and why they can't get something knocked out?
Well, I think, look, last summer, from my reporting and a lot of other people's reporting, the Chiefs offered Jones a 2-year extension at $27.25 million. It was two and 54.5, which would have made his full contract like $3 and 76, if I remember right. The Katz brothers, there was this whole thing about $30 million a year, but I think if I recall, it came down to 3 and 84. Well, the Chiefs weren't going to go to 3 and 84. So now you're at the situation where, look, the Chiefs are going to have to pay him if they want to keep him. But there's just no two ways. This idea that, like, the Chiefs are going to play hardball with them is insane because Jones has all the leverage. They have tagged L'Jarius Sneed. They cannot tag Chris Jones now. So everybody in the world knows that in 7 days, the opening of free agency starts, or at least the legal tampering period. It might as well be the opening of free agency. And so he's going to hit the market here if the Chiefs don't give him what he wants, which I think at this point, with the cap inflation and everything else, is going to be at least close to 30. Maybe it's 28, maybe it's 29. Probably depends on the structure, and mostly depends on the guarantees. What is the guarantee going to be? And so I think, look, at some point here, the Chiefs are going to have to budge if they want to keep him, and Clark Hunt is going to have to be willing to have a big cash budget, which he does not always have. And they are going to have to probably give Chris Jones a check, 75+ million guaranteed. And Hunt's going to have to sign that into escrow at the moment that they sign that contract. And that might be a big sticking point.
For L'Jarius Sneed, who is on the franchise tag, or if not officially at the moment, he is going to be on the franchise tag. There are 3 possible outcomes here. That he ends up getting traded, and we've heard that that is a possibility, that they said, hey, you can go look around, see what's out there. He could play for the Chiefs on the tag, or he could end up getting a long-term deal with Kansas City. What do you think is the most likely option?
That he's traded. But I don't think it's a full-on slam dunk for one reason. When you look at this whole thing, it is so tied into the Chris Jones stuff. If they don't get Chris Jones back, you're going to tell me that they're going to let Chris Jones walk and then they're going to trade L'Jarius Sneed? And then they're going to go to Patrick Mahomes and say, hey, Pat, listen, thanks for doing all the restructures, and Travis, thanks for taking all that money and leaving it on the table. Appreciate it. We didn't use it for anything in terms of bringing back 2 of your best defensive players. But, thanks for that. Appreciate that. I'm sure that would go over really well in the locker room. So that's one thing. And the other thing I should mention is, look, if you're a team that's going to pay L'Jarius Sneed, you are talking about probably paying him around $20 million a year. So let's say it's a 3-year deal. Let's say it's 3 and 60, and you're guaranteeing 45 of it. You then have to also give the Chiefs a 2nd-round pick here. That's a lot. Like, L'Jarius Sneed is a great player. That is a lot to give up. Not saying a team wouldn't do it. Maybe even find a few teams that are willing to do it. But if I'm the Chiefs and nobody's willing to give me a 2nd-rounder, I'm not trading him. Because at that point, I'd say, well, we'll just take a compensatory pick at the end of the year if we can't sign him. Like, I don't know that it's worth it to the Chiefs to get a 3rd-round pick from him. Like, I need to get it 2 if I'm beat. So I think a couple of those things could be stumbling blocks in him getting traded.
Our guest is Matt Verderame, covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated, SI.com, and joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline today and every Monday to talk National Football League here on 580 Sports Talk. Check out Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Mike Evans agreed to a 2-year contract extension today with an average annual value of $26 million and $35 million guaranteed. 2 questions from that. Number 1, were you surprised that the money was as big as it was for Evans? And number 2, is that a market-setting deal for wide receivers?
I wasn't. I saw some people who reported like, well, yeah, it was a big shock. I didn't think it was a big shock. I mean, people I talked to had said, yeah, 25 a year. So 26 isn't that big of a game changer. I mean, if you look at AJ Brown, he got 400. That was a couple of years ago. If you look at McLaurin, he got close to $25 million a year. It's a couple of years ago. Cap's gone up. Evans has been nothing but a 1,000-yard receiver every year of his career in Tampa. I would have been surprised he signed for less than that, especially on a 2-year deal. Like when you're taking less years, I feel like you're less willing to give up on some of those financial things because, like, it's one thing if it's 4 years and you're 30 when you're signing it, then you're like, all right, fine, I'll knock a few off. I think it's a fair deal for both sides. Evans probably is going to be really good for a couple more years. Tampa Bay, you're trying to get Baker Mayfield back. If you want Baker Mayfield to come back, that helps you. And how good is Baker Mayfield there without Mike Evans? So I think it makes sense as far as setting the market. Look, I don't think anybody's getting more than Evans. That I don't think is going to happen. Now, if Higgins gets dealt off the tag, then maybe, just because he's a lot younger. I think Pittman, if he got out of Indy, although I don't expect him to, could approach that number. But like Gabe Davis, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Darnell Mooney, none of those guys are getting near $26 million a year.
The Denver Broncos made public within the last hour that they will be releasing quarterback Russell Wilson. As expected, he heads to the open market. Do you think Russell Wilson starts NFL games next year?
Yes. Because so he gets released by Denver. Denver now has to eat an ungodly amount of dead cap money for the next essentially 2 years. But he now can go sign with somebody for the veterans minimum because he's getting all that money from Denver. He's not going to double dip here. He's getting all that money from the Broncos. So if you're Pittsburgh, if you're Atlanta, if you're the Raiders, that's the easiest contract in the world to sign. I mean, you're signing him for virtually nothing. Think whatever you want about Russell Wilson, but I mean, would I sign him for the vet minimum? Yeah, I would. So, yeah, I think he's going to start. I actually think the Raiders make a ton of sense with this. Like when he was going public with his trade request out of Seattle, the Raiders, one of the teams he mentioned, they need a quarterback. Garoppolo getting suspended opens up the window for him getting released. It just makes all the sense in the world, really. I mean, look, he's a bridge to whoever your future is. The Raiders have the 13th pick, kind of in no man's land. I think 4 quarterbacks are probably off the board by the time they get to 13. So unless they trade up, I don't know that you're taking a quarterback there. So I think they make sense. Pittsburgh makes sense. Atlanta makes sense. You toss Washington in there, although I think Washington's going to take quarterback too. That's fine as well.
Does Denver take a quarterback at 12?
I think they would like to. I mean, again, the problem is McCarthy there, and do they want McCarthy? That's the big question because Daniels may and was a long time. A lot of people in Indy don't think he gets out of the top 10. Does he get out of the top 10? If he doesn't get out of the top 10, Bo Nix. A lot of rumors in Indy that the Broncos like Bo Nix. Bo Nix will be there at 12. Is he worth the 12th overall pick? That's a significant question. So it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I think Denver, if they had their druthers, I think they would prefer to take a quarterback as well.
Matt Verderame, our guest here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. And Matt, back to the Chiefs here. Where do you see them going at receiver to pair with Rice this year? In free agency, or do you see them going, and who if they go in free agency, or do you see them going in the draft?
I think the draft more so than free agency, but I think they're going to go to both avenues. I don't think the Chiefs, I know there was a report, and I can't remember who, I apologize to whoever the reporter was, but there was a report that the Chiefs were interested in Evans. I don't want to say I have a hard time believing it. I don't think the Chiefs would pay the money it was going to take for Evans. Like the Chiefs have other things that they want to get done, priorities and whatnot, and Chris Jones is certainly number one among them. I think if the Chiefs go into free agency for a receiver, I think it's a second tier type of guy. Like I think it's like a guy like maybe Calvin Ridley. Like I think he'd be like the high end of that. Darnell Mooney, who they know from Chicago, a KJ Osborne, a Tyler Boyd, like somebody who is a floor raiser. Now Ridley would be more than that. The other guys would probably be that floor raising type. And in the draft, look, the one thing that benefits the Chiefs this year. The Chiefs probably, if you said, "Hey, what are your first two needs?" Probably tackle, probably receiver, and you couldn't have a better draft for that. I mean, there's a real case to be made that 20 of the first 50 picks are those two positions. So I think the Chiefs could absolutely at 32. Could they take, Lad McConkey? Sure. Could they take a Roman Wilson out of Michigan? Yeah, they could do that. Could they take Xavier Worthy out of Texas? Maybe that 40 time makes it a little tougher, but yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, there's so many names you could toss in there. So I would expect that they'll add one as a premium pick in the draft, and then also as somebody who helps them out in the free agency world.
Finishing things up with Matt Verderame. He covers the National Football League for SI.com and Sports Illustrated, and he also is the host of the Matt Verderame Show podcast. You can find that on his Patreon. You can find Matt on Twitter as well, at Matt Verderame, and he joins us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline every single Monday at this time. To go back to the quarterback discussion from a little bit earlier, Matt, you brought up Justin Fields and the assumption that the Bears are going to end up moving him. Well, Fields is one of about 400 quarterbacks at this point that is tied to the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins is tied to the Falcons. Russell Wilson, we've said on this show, would make sense for the Falcons. You can name any quarterback out there, J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or these guys in the draft, all tied to Atlanta. What do you think the Falcons actually want to do with their quarterback spot?
Do anything other than what they've been doing. I think it's generally the thought. You know what, though, and I don't want to take a shot at my own profession here, but the reality is, like anybody who's worth their salt in this business, we all talk to people. We sit there, we talk to each other, not necessarily about, hey, what do you think this team's going to do at 8? But like, hey, what are you hearing? What is what I'm hearing? But the reality is, you just don't know. I mean, there's so many contingency points. That's why I always laugh at Jim mock draft. And people get so worked up over a mock draft. Not the best one that anybody did at a respectable outlet had like 5 of the first 32 picks, right? It's just, look, I think the Falcons in a perfect world, hey, Kirk Cousins is available. Let's go get Kirk Cousins. But I also think like they're realistic enough to know, hey, look, Kirk Cousins may very well not be available. And if he's not available, okay, is Baker available? No? Okay. Russell Wilson, could we get him and then also draft a quarterback? If we can't, do we just go with McCarthy at 8? I mean, I think there's so many conversations. I do think Atlanta, look, they've got enough pieces on that team. I think they'd like to get a veteran guy and then maybe marry him to a younger quarterback, kind of have that transition. But in the end, I think for the Falcons, you are just so tired of being on this treadmill of Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke and on and on and on. Like, you just got to find somebody who can go in there and play the sport and play well. But I think they'd love to get a veteran guy and then also probably back that up with the draft pick, which would be the future.
Make sure you go check out Matt Verderame's work covering the NFL in Sports Illustrated and at SI.com. Go subscribe to the Matt Verderame Show on Patreon as well. Matt joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, we appreciate the time, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
That's Matt Verderame from SI.com. One text I wanted to get to real quick from the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. Heard Calvin Ridley's name come up there. Pretty simple from the 316. Bet high on Ridley. He's doing the same thing. 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk is up after the news. now. Welcome to the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis here with you. We would love for you to be a part of the show. Hit us up on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429, or you can join us on the YouTube stream. Head over to YouTube, search 580 Sports Talk. Make sure you subscribe to the channel while you're there, and you can go and hang out with us in the comment section. It's been rocking and rolling all day. Appreciate all you guys for hanging out with us in the comment section on YouTube today. You can also comment on Facebook. Go to the WIBW News Facebook page, and there you can find the live stream. You can also do so on Twitter at 580 Sports Talk and on 580WIBW.com. We have one comment here from our buddy Jay Hawker on YouTube saying, I agree with bringing back Byron Pringle if the price was right. I'm sick of the Chiefs' incompetency at punt returner. I can agree with that.
He didn't really punt return much for the Commanders last year, though.
Rich James did all right.
All right. Yeah, he just missed so much time.
Yeah, Montreal Washington returned punts there for a couple of weeks.
Shoot, I'd bring him back.
I don't remember him fumbling one.
Can he also be a gunner? Because if so, Dave Tobe, I'm sure will pound the table for him.
It's so funny that Sky Moore was such a disaster returning punts in 2022 that his stink is going to be on the punt return position for the Chiefs, probably for at least another year.
Oh, easily. I shared this before. I think it was during the college football playoff where there was that rash of fumbled punts as well. Nearly screwed Michigan in the Rose Bowl with a fumbled punt. I had a buddy who walked on at KU, played just a year with the program, and he was a pretty good high school football player, and just on, I think, in the suburbs of Kansas City on the Missouri side. And he was a punt returner. And he texted us, our buddies, our group chat, during the college football playoff. He said, no one should ever return a punt. Fair catch and run away from every single one. It is so stupid. No one should ever do it. And I swear it wasn't 5 minutes and then Michigan fumbled that punt that nearly rolled into the end zone against Alabama. He said, I told you, I promised you, no one at any level should ever field a punt.
That almost cost them the game. He fumbled that at the 1.5 yard line.
Yeah. He then tweeted after they won the title in apology. He was like, sorry that I almost screwed us. And all the Michigan fans were, nah, dude, you didn't. That's fine. You didn't screw us. That's all that matters. By the way, speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, we had another comment here from Sam on YouTube who asked, will the Chiefs take a wide receiver in round 1? Lance Zierlein of NFL Network, who we've had on the show before to talk NFL draft, he has a wide receiver going to the Chiefs with number 32. Can you guess who it is? He was a pretty big and pretty notable name this weekend at the Combine.
Was it Xavier Worthy?
It is Xavier Worthy. He set the Combine record of 4.2140.
That makes me think he's not going to last to 32.
Yeah.
I think that the Chiefs, as I'm sitting here right now, I haven't eaten the tape. I haven't done the deep dive. But I think if the Chiefs came away from either one of those Texas receivers, Xavier Worthy or A.D. Mitchell at 32, they would come away from the draft with a day one starting wide receiver.
They're also
who might even be every bit as good as a rookie as Rashee Rice.
They're also looking at Oregon State receiver Anthony Gould. They're hosting him for a visit, according to Ryan Fowler of Bleacher Report.
Not really a first-round pick.
No, but he ran a 4.39.
They do have a type.
They want speed.
They do have a type.
By the way, apropos of everything, actually, John Ross had 62 catches in 5 years in the NFL. Just worth putting it out there. Xavier Worthy broke John Ross's record. John Ross also did not know how to catch the football.
Yeah,
he was very bad. He's probably really PO'd that Xavier Worthy broke his record because now he has nothing.
Yeah,
except being a bust.
We won't remember John Ross anymore ever again.
Do you remember the last team who signed him before he retired?
It was Kansas City Chiefs.
It was
before this last training camp.
Yeah. In fact, if you Google John Ross, the first picture that pops up is him in his Chiefs turtleneck. Those pictures are just so funny. Keep sending them in on the YouTube comment stream or on our YouTube stream, Facebook, or in the Top City Metal Supply text line. A couple of other comments here from YouTube that I want to get to. MPM, our guy, says Rashee Rice ran a 4.51. 40 times are not everything. Someone actually did a dive on Twitter this weekend that indicated 40 time does not correlate at all to NFL success. At all.
No, otherwise we would be preparing for the Hall of Fame induction of Darius Hayward Bay.
Exactly. Yes. God. The king of concussions. at 8 of them or something. No, that's totally true. Now, Xavier Worthy, I do think, is a better prospect than, at least relative to where they're expected to be drafted. Like, John Ross never should have gone in the top 10.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous at the time. It's ridiculous now.
Worthy's 40 time is noteworthy because it sets him, it gives him something that sets him apart from what is a pretty crowded class of first-round talents at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think this is as noteworthy beyond just being a combine record, why it's something that, gives him a little helium, I guess, in the draft process coming out. But no, it certainly isn't the only thing in the world. Like, you have to be able to have some speed, some separation. I wouldn't want to be a wide receiver, go out and run you run a 4.8, 4.9, then you're not going to get drafted.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's what Jake Bobo ran, and he got significant time as an undrafted rookie with the Seahawks this last year.
Yeah.
He ran like a 4.8.
They're drafting football players, not Olympic sprinters. Yeah, and NPM following up with that.
Not a lot of Olympics. I mean, there was Bullet Bob Hayes. He had an okay career. Ronaldo Nehemiah, not so much.
Not so much, no.
Willie Gault, decent.
Who was the
Marquise Goodwin?
Goodwin, yeah, he's got the Olympic rings tattooed on it.
Yeah.
Who was the other guy who?
James Jett. Was James Jett a track guy?
I don't remember actually. Wasn't there someone from Florida? Demps.
Yeah, Jeff Demps.
Jeff Demps.
Yeah, Demps.
Jeff Demps. Another one here from Vance.
James Jett. James Jett was an Olympic sprinter.
That's an incredible name.
Yeah.
All-time great name. From Vance, mentioning a local guy, Ben Sinnott, great combine. His athletic testing numbers were good. Size is good. He's going to be a hot commodity. In a year that is way down from where the tight ends were a year ago, Ben Sinnott might be one of the first 2 tight ends taken. I would not be surprised one bit if he's one of the first tight ends taken. Also, we'll get to some more draft a little bit later on. Mark wants to know, do we think in defense or offense first for the Kansas City Chiefs? I think it'll be offense. I think it'll be a tackle or a receiver at 32.
I do too. I think that's where they're going.
That's what my expectation would be. Appreciate all the comments. Appreciate all the texts. Again, our Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. From construction sites to renovations, from the farm to the garage, Top City Metal Supply understands the value of precision and cost efficiency. No more wasted materials, no more wasted money. Metal cut to the exact size you need. Top City Metal Supply, located on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field. Wanted to get to a little Royals baseball here. Some news and notes from Surprise, Arizona over the last couple of days. A lot on the pitching front in particular. A lot of the...
Not a great weekend for the pitching.
No. Not a great evaluation period.
Yeah.
But some interesting notes. One, this is from ESPN. Was this from Kylie McDaniel, Dan?
No, this is Jeff Passan. Had 10 guys that he's hearing lots of positive things about from spring training so far, and he led off the column with Cole Reagans, and this is what he had to say: the comparison sounded too good to be true, or too ridiculous to be true.
Whoa.
One evaluator, smitten by the 26-year-old pitcher, said of Reagans, he's left-handed DeGrom. To comp a pitcher who's thrown all of 136 Major League innings with Jacob DeGrom, Major League Baseball's undisputed king of stuff, feels like an exaggeration. Well, look at Reagans' first start this spring. His fastball averaged 99.2 miles per hour. He threw one at 101 miles an hour with 20 inches of induced vertical break. Not a single starter in baseball last season hit that velocity with that sort of vert, which means the ball doesn't drop nearly as much as an average fastball. Reagans throws a four-seamer, changeup, slider, curveball, perhaps best of all, a cutter that was sitting at 95. In the past, injuries kept Reagans from reaching his promise. If he can stay healthy, he has the makings of one of the best pitchers in all of baseball.
See, I thought it was just a comparison because he hasn't thrown many innings and he's had Tommy John twice. This is much more encouraging.
Yes, like this is like the stuff is which is a wild thing to consider. And yeah, like when I think about a comparison to Jacob DeGrom, you know, it's hard not to think about the guy who's thrown like a total of 187 innings in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, the injury history for DeGrom is not particularly inspiring. But you know what he was before all that?
The best pitcher in baseball.
The best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
And so that is the more encouraging side of this particular comparison. Look, like it is understandable to be hesitant, to be excited about any aspect of Kansas City Royals baseball because the last 6 years.
Look at everything around us. Yeah.
The last 6 years have been so bad. And then before the 2 years well, really, I guess 4 decent years, 2 great years before that. There's like almost 3 full decades of not being particularly great. Like, I get it. I get that you are not willing to give your heart to the hometown 9 just yet. I understand if that is your where your head is at during this Cactus League season. But the Royals have one of the best young shortstops in all of baseball, and he's locked in with a long-term contract extension. And they may have, for the low, low price of one rented Aroldis Chapman, have acquired one of the best starting pitchers in all of baseball. Like, that is the ceiling. Somebody with this kind of stuff who did what he did. This isn't like, oh, he's coming up from AAA and everybody's excited about him. Like, you probably weren't watching in August and September last year. And again, I understand. That's okay. But it was against big league competition, and he was dominating. He was shoving for 2 months.
Yeah.
And he's come back throwing even harder to start spring training. If Cole Reagan stays healthy, and if he throws 160, 170 innings, he's got a decent chance to lead the American League in strikeouts. He's got a decent chance to be a candidate for the Cy Young Award. Like, really and truly, that's what we're talking about with Cole Reagan. I think he's that dude. And now you've got evaluators across baseball who are even more bullish on him than I am.
That's an incredible comparison, if we're being completely honest. I mean, the thing that worries me is, I mean, his stretch last year was incredible. It was incredible. I get worried about someone who's already had the severe injury and, reparative surgery twice, and just, can he do it over a longer period of time? And I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. There's a lot to like. You just worry about that. I think it's fair to be a little bit worried about those. I mean, Tommy John surgery twice by the time you're 26 years old is a lot of strain on the body.
Yes.
So we'll see. I'm hopeful. I hope for nothing but the best. He also has the most Southern name possible. Cole Gatlin Reagans. It's an extremely Southern name.
It is incredible he's not like driving the number 38 Ford Quality Care Ford credit car. Is that even a thing anymore?
I don't think so.
That is a wild. I think that was like Dale Jarrett's sponsor or something
Man,
like that.
Dale Jarrett.
That's
guy.
All my NASCAR references are from like the late 90s.
That was the number 88 for the record.
Shout out to Sterling Marlin, wherever you are.
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's so good. Dale Jarrett with that great mustache, too.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous.
He's a good driver. He won a points title, I think, one time.
Did he? By the way, your point about, I actually didn't know that. Jacob deGrom, he threw 204 innings in 2019. In the 4 seasons since, he has 254 total.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's a drag. It's such a bummer that his, but I mean, like, he's throwing 99 mile an hour sliders. Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah. It's shocking that his arm just hasn't come flying off the side of his body.
No.
You got to put a governor on something. You can't throw everything that hard.
No, you can't.
Like Noah Syndergaard, was throwing 98 mile an hour sliders. Cole Reagan's just not throwing sliders.
Like
98
Steven
miles an hour.
Strasburg, eventually arm dying because he threw too fast.
Yeah, it just, at some point, you've got to reel it in a little bit. And maybe someday pitchers will learn that. Doesn't seem to be right now.
But no, be excited about Cole Reagan. This is a guy who can front a rotation and can stand toe-to-toe with anybody in the division. Like, everybody else's number one starter. Could Reagans be better than any of those guys? Like, I'd take him over Shane Bieber right this second. I'd probably take him over Tarek Skubal, who is having a very similarly exciting spring for Detroit. I'd take him over whoever Minnesota's number one starter is going to be. But genuinely don't know who their number one starter is going to be.
Yeah.
I am very bullish on Cole Reagan's if his arm stays attached to his body, which is that's the caveat for Cole Reagan's. It's the caveat for every pitcher, right? Like, pitchers get hurt. It's a gig economy now. I think I saw somebody with Baseball Prospectus say pitchers are like gig workers these days. But if he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the best pitchers in the American League. And you could do a lot worse. If you're trying to have a competitive ball club, you can do a lot worse than starting with 2 guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Cole Reagan.
No doubt about that. 100% agree with you.
Barbara asks in the YouTube comments if Reagans will be the opening day starter. I don't know. I think it was David Lesky who pointed out that if you just follow like the every 5 days all the way up to the opening day for the Royals, it looks like they might be lining up Michael Wacha to be the opening day guy, but opening day is just one day. And sometimes you like to put a veteran there and not put all that pressure on a guy in his first full big league season, or their first opening day is an opening day start on the mound. That might be what Matt Quatrero is trying to do there, if they do indeed go with Waka. So I wouldn't read too much into whether or not Reagan starts opening day.
Speaking of a starter, Seth Lugo did not have a great outing on Saturday. He gave up 5 earned runs in 2 1/3 innings, with 3 homers given up.
What's the expectation for Lugo this year? He's got a very interesting interesting is a very vague word in that sense, but I think he's got kind of an interesting profile and interesting level of experience. I like the signing. Let me put it at that first, but it's been a long time since he has been a full-time starter. 2017, in fact, was the last time he was a full-time starter, until last season.
Right.
Well, I mean, like if he's a typical number 4 starter, I mean, that's fine. I would take that. I think he can be better than that, though.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with him being a pretty capable, like, number 3 caliber starting pitcher. Like, I'm not in the least bit fussed about giving up 3 home runs in a spring training game. I could not care less. Wind was blowing out. It's the second outing of spring training. Doesn't matter.
The other thing too,
not really all that fussed about that. He's never been like great at limiting the long ball, but he's also never had like it doesn't look like Jordan Lyles. He's not giving like 1.5 home runs per 9,
Yeah. The other thing too, and a handful of different things were written about this weekend. A lot of Royals pitchers are working on new things right now. I mean, spring training, you got to follow the words in the name. Spring training. You are working on things. You are developing. For a lot of guys, you're ramping up to the season. Some guys are trying to develop certain things, working out kinks, whatever. There was a story from Craig Brown this weekend over at Into the Fountains about Brady Singer working on a sweeper. Jordan Lyles is working on a new grip on his curveball. He talked to Jalen Thompson of the KC Star about that. This is the time to try new things and to get the kinks worked out.
Right.
So I'm with you. I mean, I don't know. I did not watch or listen to the entirety of the Royals game on Saturday. So I apologize. I cannot tell you exactly what was going on with Seth Lugo. But if you're just trying to essentially get warmed up, get stretched out, maybe shake out a few cobwebs, I'm fine.
You might be trying to work on one thing or another in particular, one pitch or another in particular. Like you're prioritizing those things more than you're prioritizing the result at this point. Now, if Seth Lugo's got like an ERA at a 12 at the end of spring training, you could say, well, that wasn't great. Hopefully he can, round into form pretty quick to start this season. But second start of the spring, it's not the kind of thing that would concern me in the least.
And let's also not forget, we remember 2023 spring training when the Kansas City Royals were just dominant.
Yeah, they were a juggernaut. And I mean, they're 8-3 this year. Like they're
kings of spring training,
rolling through the Cactus League.
Yeah, not too pressed about that for now. But I mean, if we're a month from now and we're in the first couple weeks of April and it's still a problem,
giving up 3 home runs in 2 1/3 every time out, then we've got a problem.
Let's get to this real quick. This was reporting from the Kansas City Beacon publication. Got more stadium drama, folks. It never ends. It absolutely never ends. This is from Josh Merchant, is the journalist who wrote this. KC curveball. If voters okay sales taxes for a ballpark, Royals will ask the city and state, that's Jackson County and Kansas City and Missouri, for up to $700 million more. The Royals are pitching a $1 billion sales tax to pay for the new stadium, but they'll need another $700 million to make the stadium happen. That's where the team expects Kansas City and Missouri to come in. This doesn't directly affect us because we do not live in Jackson County. We do not live in Kansas City. We do not live in Missouri. Although I haven't seen Spencer's apartment. Maybe he's been lying this whole time and does indeed live on the other side of the river.
Could have been.
That would be a very, very long drive that I do not want to make.
Could be commuting from Belton for all we know.
Yeah. Excelsior Springs his own. Hey, this sucks. I would be so mad if I lived in Jackson County. And I understand. I always try to stay as on the fence as I can because I know people get very heated about these kinds of things. And I understand you don't want the Royals to leave. And I know there is a very strong subculture on the Missouri side of the Kansas City border. It's the Norm Stewarts of the world, and there are a lot of them. I will never spend a dime on the Kansas side. I don't want anything to do with Kansas. I think it's bizarre, but so be it. So the fear of, well, what if they went to Wyandotte County? Oh my God, we can never have that. What if they go to some of that open land, outside of Gardner and Johnson County? Oh my God, I can't even imagine that. Like this fear that you're going to lose your team because they move locales, or they move to a different county or whatever. And that's a thing for fans and residents. That's also a thing for politicians, because you do not want to be the politician that loses a sports team.
Nope.
You do not want that to be you. That being said, so here's where this is all hard for me to reconcile, because as much as it seems like it is the only thing in life for me sometimes, there are other things in life and in culture and in society than sports, than in Kansas City, the Royals, for example. So you're asking for a sales tax to be renewed that'll pay for $1 billion for a stadium project. You're going to bulldoze over a cultural district, a small and frankly not very powerful cultural district in Kansas City that is begging you to keep it alive. And then you're going to ask for $700 million more from the state. And let's be frank, we all know where that money is eventually going to come from. And Missouri folks, it is you. And that, where does it end?
It's the obfuscation that bothers me so much. From the article from the Beacon, the last time that Jackson County voters okayed a sales tax to fund the Chiefs and Royals in 2006, local officials had a financial document called a sources and uses statement. That financial plan outlined how much money would come from the teams and how much would come from the state, city, and county. A spokesperson for Kansas City said the city manager and finance director do not have a copy of a comparable document for this particular measure. Neither does Mayor Quentin Lucas, neither does Frank White, Jackson County executive, or neither do county county legislators, and the Jackson County Sports Complex Authority doesn't have one either. So it's the obfuscating. It's not being upfront with, okay, this is exactly where this money is going to come from. Because then you get a chance as a voter to make an informed decision. If you're okay kicking in the sales tax and it's really important to you to keep the Royals on the Kansas City side, and you like those renderings, and that's something you want to vote for, then you can vote for it. But if you don't like the idea of where all this money is coming from, if you don't feel like public money ought to be going to a sports stadium, then you can vote no. But either way, you can do it informed. Mm-hmm. And the more it feels like the Royals want to hide the numbers on this, the less anybody's going to like it.
We have a comment here on YouTube from our guy Jayhawker who says, my brother lives in Jackson County. He's voting no. Honestly, and it's different for me because I'm not a Royals fan. Throw that caveat in there, but I'd vote no. Like, I need a better plan. I don't think this is a good plan the Royals have set out. I do not. And the Chiefs just sitting idly by knowing they're going to make out almost quite literally like bandits after this whole thing is frustrating in and of itself. If I was a resident in that area, in that locale, I would vote no. But I'm not, so it really doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at all the money that John Sherman has and that this team has, and, the whole thing, oh, look at all these big name investors we brought in that are part of the team. Y'all can't come up with a better plan than this? I don't know. And again, I know there's the politics of where they're going to put it up. Is it going to be Jackson County or Clay County, or what about the other side of the border? I mean, it's nonsense at this point. For what it's worth, I am confident they are going to pass it. The sales tax. I am almost
one way or another. They'll get something done, and whether I don't know what concessions they'll have to make, but I mean, this is all part of the bargaining process. It's just been a particularly messy process this time around, and a lot of people are kind of frustrated by it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the plan, to be completely honest with you. Coming up on the other side of this break, we've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the week, and then we're going to hear from Jason Kelce's retirement speech today. The center for the Eagles retired, obviously the brother of Travis Kelce. Andy Reid drafted both of them. And we're going to hear a couple of comments pertaining to the Chiefs and pertaining to Big Red from Jason Kelce later on this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. to find our first What Is Wrong With You winner of the week here on 580 Sports Talk. Our first full week for the month of March in What Is Wrong With You. Our news stories today
Won't even be a full week, though.
I guess it's not. Yeah. Okay, we're starting on Monday. It's actually a 2-day week. That's all it is.
Another short week. We'll crown a weekly champion tomorrow.
Yeah, well, our first two entrants for the week, though, I'm going to go first with our stories today. And we're going to Florida. Okay. A former manager at the Dunkin' Donuts in Largo. By the way, I'm not calling it Dunkin'. That's a stupid name. I'm calling it Dunkin' Donuts.
That's their new name.
I know.
If they build new ones, they say whatever town runs on Dunkin'.
Ben Affleck isn't paying me. I don't have to call them.
That can be the slogan, but no, just to call it Dunkin'. No, Dunkin' Donuts.
And I like Dunkin' Donuts. I'll go get a double chocolate right now, and I'll house that thing.
With sprinkles, please. I like sprinkles on my donuts.
I can go sprinkles. What's your favorite donut, real quick?
I mean, you can't beat the classic glaze, but I also do like a chocolate covered with sprinkles.
Okay.
They're sprinkles, not Jimmy's.
Never heard them called Jimmy's in my life.
Apparently, some places call sprinkles Jimmy's.
No. What?
In hell? No. I refuse.
I've never heard that in my whole entire life.
Wait a minute. This is a What Is Wrong With You in and of itself.
What?
It's a legit thing.
What? Jimmy's? This is all right. I need to do a deep dive on this. I need to get Woodard and Bernstein on this.
Is there a map for this?
There is somewhere.
Here's a map. I made a handy map. Jimmy's versus Sprinkles. Oh, the joke is it's all red and everyone calls them sprinkles. So that's a bit.
Oh, that's funny. I see that now. Okay, here we go.
Oh, all right. No, most of the country is red. It's New England, basically.
Wow.
And a patch of eastern Pennsylvania
that calls them Jimmy's.
It is a thing, though.
Someone
said it to me once, and I said, "Excuse me?"
Yeah, I'm appalled here. This is outrageous. There's also okay. Well, on the heat map from the New York Times of where people call them Jimmy's, also like Kenosha, Wisconsin. That's the only other. It's like Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Kenosha, Wisconsin. Which, by the way, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Kenosha. Nope. I'm gonna say it, probably no. This tells you all you need to know about Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'll just leave it at that. All right.
Anyway,
so back to our story from Largo, Florida.
Speaking of Dunkin' Donuts,
the former manager at the Largo, Florida Dunkin' Donuts store has been arrested on a charge that she stole more than $153,000 from the business. Molly Christine Cox, a 50-year-old woman, is facing a felony grand theft charge. She was arrested Thursday, booked into the Pinellas County Jail, where she was held without bail. She left her job after an audit and was currently working at Burger King. No word if she was also grifting there. Cox was the manager at the Dunkin' store on Missouri Avenue for several years, during which the thefts occurred. The store conducted its audit, and the store had a payroll shortage. The audit and a later police investigation showed a large number of deposits were missing, and they were supposed to have been made at a Wells Fargo bank. Cox was the person responsible for making the deposits and was shown on surveillance video leaving with the deposits, according to the affidavit. Police subpoenaed Cox's bank accounts and found a significant amount of deposits into her accounts from sources other than payroll. The affidavit states that Cox admitted to management that she took some of the deposits, but not all of them, before walking away from her job. In a later interview with detectives, here's the real kicker for you, Cox denied committing thefts and said her extra income, quote, was from her boyfriend's narcotics sales. No, I did not steal from the Dunkin' Donuts. My boyfriend sells drugs.
My boyfriend is a drug dealer. That's who you ought to be looking at.
Cox was previously arrested in 2015 on a scheme to defraud charge.
And they put her in charge of a Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah.
How did that get past the background check?
Yeah, right. She was charged in a case with stealing $2,100 of lottery tickets from a Winn-Dixie. She pled guilty and was put on probation.
Wow.
No, I did not steal this money that you have me on video stealing. My boyfriend actually deals drugs.
Two things that America runs on, Dunkin' and fraud.
There are levels to that.
Yes, there are. We are going for my story. This is a cross-country tale of theft of a baby. We meet Florida,
Whoa!
Yes. We meet Florida couple Marley Jarena Ardilla Rego and Chun Ho Vincent Lai. I wish I had chosen a story with people with shorter names. They have been charged with kidnapping, burglary, and robbery in connection with an alleged February 20th incident in Federal Way, Washington. In the days leading up to the incident, 33-year-old Ardila Urrego allegedly asked her cousin, the mother of an infant, what her address was repeatedly, according to charging documents. Ardila Urrego allegedly told the woman that she had ordered a bed frame for the woman's child and that it would be delivered to her on February 20th. When the day finally arrived, the victim says there was a knock at the door soon after her husband left for work. She reportedly told authorities she looked through the peephole and saw someone who appeared to be a delivery driver with an Amazon box. As soon as she opened the door, the purported driver, who prosecutors say was actually Lai, allegedly began punching her in the face, then threw her to the ground and zip-tied her wrists and ankles.
Good Lord.
A woman unknown to her then entered the apartment and allegedly held her down while the man put the infant in an Amazon box and left the apartment. One of the suspects allegedly indicated they would harm the woman's 2-year-old child if she didn't comply. Once the suspects left, the woman was able to free herself from the zip ties and call 911. The victim's father reportedly told authorities he suspected Ardila Urrego was behind the incident. He claimed it was unusual for her to ask about the victim's address because they weren't close. He also claimed he was aware of a plan Ardila Urrego had made to sell a baby for $70,000. How does one get wind of a plan like that? How does one make a plan like that?
Maybe he offered to buy it.
Maybe he did. Once police were notified, they used cell phone information to locate the couple's vehicle and track them down. They were able to rescue the unharmed infant less than 4 hours after the alleged kidnapping.
Dude, 7 months old. This baby probably pooped all over that truck.
Yeah, you know it smelled crazy in
4
that Amazon
hours?
box.
Bro, that's like 3 diapers at least. This smells like poop all over the place.
I think if I had become aware of somebody that I vaguely knew having a plan to sell a baby for $70,000, like if it was that specific particularly, I wouldn't have waited for them to see which baby they had in mind to steal. I'm calling the cops right then and there.
Yeah, that's not really not if it doesn't happen to me kind of thing. That's very much we got to nip this in the bud immediately. I agree with you. How do you become aware of this?
Yeah. I heard through the grapevine that this person wanted to sell a baby for $70K.
I have some questions about the victim's father here, if we're being completely honest.
I think he needed to be a little bit more proactive and a little less reactive in this case. I'm going to keep it real with you both. If I get wind that one of you is going to sell a baby, I am calling authorities.
I would too. Yeah. I'm ratting you both out.
Yeah, 100%. A text from the 785 on the Top City Mail Supply text line. I think Dan has forgotten this is supposed to be a lighthearted segment.
Yeah.
What? Hey, I give you butt stories and you yell at me.
That won last week, by the way.
I know it did.
It had to.
I was listening on the way to Riley.
Appalled, but it had to win.
Yeah.
This wins today. The other one's funny. This is deranged. But also, again, I have a lot of questions. Why? One.
Yeah.
2, how did he know? What was he cooking?
How did he get through? Oh, my wife and I are my partner is not close with this person, but knows her well enough for me to have heard that she has this master baby thieving plan.
Also, of all the weird excuses and cover-ups, a bed frame?
Yeah,
the child is 7 months old. You don't need a bed frame for a long time.
Right. I don't need a bed frame. You're still in the crib at 7 months. Gee, thanks. You know what?
Is this an investment?
Why don't you just, you know what? Send me a shipment of diapers instead.
You should give me an Amazon card, bro.
Gift card.
Yeah, I have many questions. That gets my vote for today, though.
Yeah, I think that has to win today. But I hope we find somebody to beat them tomorrow because they suck, man.
Horrible people. Coming up on the other side of this timeout, following What Is Wrong With You, Jason Kelsey in his retirement speech today acknowledged, unsurprising, his brother as well as Andy Reid. We'll hear from them coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. A comment here from Barbara in the YouTube feed. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube is where you can find us. Regarding our winner for What Is Wrong With You, I think they were all involved. I tend to agree with Barbara. Like that, you don't just hear about this.
Yeah, maybe the male partner in question, the father, had maybe a change of heart.
You hear through the grapevine, like, oh, did you hear they got fired? Oh, did you hear they're moving?
Not, oh, did you hear they want to steal a baby and sell it for $70,000? So specific.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I
need
smell
another
a rat.
investigation
I
here.
smell something fishy.
Something reeks. It's not just a small child either. Jason Kelsey announced his retirement officially today. We knew this was coming after the Eagles were eliminated from the postseason this year.
Schefter tweeted it almost immediately, and then
then
he said, "I'm not ready to decide yet."
Yeah, and look, I give Jason Kelsey credit for not making the end of the season all about himself, and additionally for saying, hey, look, I was way too emotional to make a rational decision. I appreciate that. That is a hard thing to admit as someone who makes a lot of rational or irrational decisions, not as many rational ones as I should. But he officially announced his retirement today, and we've got a little audio here from his speech. Did you guys watch the speech at all?
I watched a little bit of it.
I saw the first 34 seconds where he couldn't get a word out of his mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah. I've seen some other clips.
Yeah, it's very emotional. And I actually had to shorten a couple of these because there's just a lot of long pauses where he had his head in his hands trying to get the words out. But a couple things that I thought were interesting. We'll start with what he said about Andy Reid and mentioning the fact that not only did Andy Reid draft Travis Kelce, but he drafted Jason as well back when he was in Philly.
I won't forget the call I got from Andy Reid on draft day and my father rushing into the room. With tears streaming down his face as his son's dreams had just been realized. It had just been announced on TV I had been drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I won't forget 2 years later, that same man and my brother receiving a call and him being drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. This time, the tears streaming down both my father and I's face as my brother had just realized his own.
I mean, that sets the tone pretty much for the entirety of this very long retirement speech. I mean, it is incredible. It's also kind of amazing when you think about it, how many connections the Chiefs and the Eagles have currently.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Kelsey brothers, one on each team, spent their whole careers with those respective teams. Andy Reid drafted each of them and is the winningest coach of all time for both franchises. Taylor Swift grew up in Pennsylvania, Eagles fan, knew Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia. Her parents were at least somewhat friendly with Andy Reid. Now dating Travis Kelce. I mean, the parallels are actually kind of incredible.
You can even go back to Dick Vermeil,
sure.
Leading the Eagles to their first ever Super Bowl, and also having been a coach of some really good Chiefs teams there in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Herm Edwards, played for the Eagles, coached the Chiefs. Yeah, like there are a lot. Like you can pull a lot of different Eagle Chief threads.
Nick Foles has come out and said he kept playing football because Andy Reid brought him in to be a backup for 1 year in Kansas City. Didn't play a single snap, if I remember correctly, but he was on the roster for 1 year, and he said that reinvigorated my desire to be in the NFL. Ends up going back to Philadelphia. What happens within the next couple of years? Wins a Super Bowl. Might have even been the next year as the backup to Carson Wentz goes in there and wins the Super Bowl. So many parallels. So that brings us to, again, a longer clip here, and I had to shorten this down as best as I could. Jason Kelsey talking about his brother Travis and their relationship, and you're not alone if this starts the waterworks.
This is where it's going to go off the rails. I won't forget falling short to the Chiefs and the conflicted feeling of immense heartbreak I had selfishly for myself and for my teammates. And at the same time, the amount of pride I had that my brother had climbed the mountaintop once again. We have a small family. We have a small family. No cousins, one aunt, one uncle. It was really my brother and I our whole lives. We did almost everything together. Competed, fought, laughed, cried, and learned from each other. We invented games, imagined ourselves as star players of that time. We'd envision making the winning plays day after day on Kohler Ridge Road. We won countless Super Bowls in our minds before ever leaving the house. And when we weren't playing, we were at the other one's games, but seated in a lawn chair or a bench, a Capri Sun in our hand that Mom had packed, cheering during the game, and waiting outside afterward to celebrate a victory together or offer encouragement after a defeat. There is no chance I'd be here without the bond Travis and I share. It made me stronger, tougher, smarter, and taught me the values of cooperation, loyalty, patience, and understanding.
And by the same token, too, and Travis has said this before, he does not have a career in football, let alone the NFL, if it's not for his brother. Because his brother is the one who convinced Brian Kelly, of all people, to let Travis Kelce back onto the team at Cincinnati after he got kicked off. Like, I mean, it's incredible. I know the Mannings are the first family of football, but the Kelce's are right there, man. I mean, you're going to have two brothers in the Hall of Fame. That's incredible.
Yeah, and not the same odds as that happening for the Mannings, who were both the number one overall pick in the draft. Jason Kelce was a 6th round pick. He's the second greatest 6th round pick in the history of the National Football League draft. Like,
yes,
there's no debating who number 1 is, and there's also no debating who number 2 is, because Jason Kelce had a career without peer at the center position. He's one of the very, very best to ever play that position. And then for Travis Kelce to have the Hall of Fame career he's had and arguably be the greatest tight end of all time as a 3rd round pick, as a guy who was kicked off his college team, as a guy who suffered a season-ending injury in his 2nd pro season. Somebody who first as a rookie suffered a season-ending injury and didn't get going until his 2nd season as a 3rd round pick, and now he's this. Like, they're a remarkable story. They're a remarkable family. I think I've said this before. Every time I see Jason and Travis interact, it makes me want to call my own brother and just to say hi. It's a really special relationship those two have. And Jason Kelce, you could tell, wrote that speech. Like,
oh yeah,
did his best to get it all down on paper so he could get through it easier. And you can obviously hear that didn't totally work, but he's a very gifted writer, communicator. He's going to have one heck of a broadcasting career if he wants it. And if he just wants to do his podcasting thing, that's fine too. Having Jason Kelce around to tell football stories and be a football personality is good for football.
Oh yeah, he met with it was reported during Super Bowl week, he met with a lot of these NFL outlets, or outlets that cover the NFL. I saw
ESPN and Fox for sure.
I think Prime as well.
Oh, that would make sense.
Which he already had his documentary. I think it'd be cool if they did something maybe on Prime where they go around to do tailgates with Jason Kelce.
That'd be fun.
That would be epic.
Like what they do with Marshawn Lynch, going around just like doing stuff with Marshawn Lynch with Jason Kelce. That'd be fun. No, it's a really cool speech, and I'm not sure if we've ever had a more popular offensive lineman.
Yeah.
There have been all-time greats. I don't know about anyone more popular than him.
Maybe Art Donovan, but that's like a really washed
The
reference.
Hogs all together.
Yeah, maybe. Dan and Spencer have you the rest of the way, and we'll lead off the 5 o'clock hour with our 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up next.
Let's get it. Final hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Monday. We're down to the two-man game rest of the way. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis kicking it with you. Brendan Dworzinski is off to the Washburn Basketball Coaches Show. Final one before the MIAA tournament. That'll be on from 6 o'clock tonight at Skinny Sports Bar and Grill at Huntoon Engage here in Topeka over on our sister station, home for the Ichabods. Classic Country 106.9. Meanwhile, over here on 580 Sports Talk, we got a full final hour of the show to bring you today. Lots more to get to. Plenty of headlines from the weekend that was in the world of sports. We'll talk a little college basketball. Did you know, Spencer, that championship week starts tonight?
I did, because I was on Twitter a little bit ago, and Mid-Major Madness was tweeting that he was on the road, or that account was on the road, and they were at the was it Atlantic A-Sun?
Yes, the A-Sun. The A-Sun tournament starts tonight. So it is officially March Madness, the pigtail games in the Atlantic Sun Conference tournament.
I can't wait for that tournament to be over and the probable champion season to be over, because I think their head coach is going to make a leap back to his alma mater in Marshall University if Dan D'Antoni decides that he's had enough of coaching and hangs it up after this atrocious season Marshall's had as A.W. Hamilton, the head coach of Eastern Kentucky.
Okay, Eastern Kentucky. That was going to be my follow-up
Eastern
question.
Kentucky, he's a Marshall alum in A.W. Hamilton, and from sources that I have heard, says he would love to coach back at his alma mater.
You know what I like about the Atlantic Sun tournament? They reseed.
Yes.
So they have the pigtail games. They got 10 teams in the tournament. Everybody gets in. The 9 and 10 play tonight, and 7 and 8 play tonight. Winner of the 9-10 game plays the number 1 seed. Winner of the 7-8 game plays the number 2 seed. The 3 and the 6 play, the 4 and the 5 play. That's not new. They reseed after that. The highest remaining seed plays the lowest remaining seed, and the other 2 teams play in the semifinals. I kind of like that. I would be okay if more tournaments did that, honestly. Yeah. If more of the college basketball conference tournaments did that. I'll save my thoughts on this for later on this hour, but I have a firm belief that conferences should do everything they can to make sure that their best regular season team makes the NCAA tournament. And if that means trying to protect them through various bracket machinations in the conference tournament, then that's what they should do. But every mid-major to small conference should be protecting their number 1, their league champion at all costs.
Yes, they should.
In these tournaments. Okay.
As a fan of a mid-major team that last year, unfortunately, didn't win the conference, but had a team that could have made the tournament had it been in a different conference. Yes, I'm in agreement with you.
We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on in the hour. Get to some other Royals stuff. We talked a little Royals earlier in the program. We'll kick around some other Royals factoids on a day off for the boys in blue today in the Cactus League. No Royals baseball today. You are, of course, invited and encouraged to be part of the conversation. You can hit us up in the YouTube live chat. If you are watching on the YouTube stream on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, you can participate in the live chat. You can also leave comments if you're watching on Twitter, our Twitter handle, 580 Sports Talk. And if you're watching at WIBW News on Facebook, if you're watching on our Facebook page, however you're watching the video stream, if you leave a comment, we'll see it and respond to it. We, of course, also have the Top City Metal Supply text line open for business, 785-272-9429. The Top City Metal Supply text line. No more wasting money on metal pieces that leave you with unnecessary leftovers. Top City Metal will cut exact lengths of aluminum, steel, and stainless steel tailored to your project's specifications. Start optimizing your budget with Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field. So lots of ways you can get involved with the program today, and maybe if you send good Ask Me Anything questions, maybe we'll get to those for myself and Spencer maybe a little bit later on this hour if we've got the time. We've got lots of headlines to get to, so let's go ahead and jump right into those. We'll start with the men's and women's basketball AP Top 25 polls released earlier today. We spoke about it earlier in the show that Kansas is out of the top 10 for the first time in 3 years. It is the worst ranking for the Jayhawks since they were ranked 15th midway through the 2020-21 season. They fell 7 spots to 14th this week after losing a pair of top 25 games, losing to now number 20 BYU, who won both games last week, and number 11 Baylor. So KU dropping 7 spots this week, one of the big fallers in this week's poll. Houston is number 1 for a second straight week, receiving 52 of 62 first place votes. UConn, Purdue, Tennessee, Arizona rounding out the top 5. Iowa State, North Carolina, Marquette, Duke, and Creighton, numbers 6 through 10. Baylor, Illinois, Auburn, Kansas, and Kentucky, 11 through 15. Alabama, South Carolina, Washington State, Gonzaga, and BYU, 16 through 20. Rounding out the top 25, a bunch of mid-majors. San Diego State, Utah State, St. Mary's, South Florida, and Dayton. So not a lot of major conference presence at the bottom of this poll. 6 of the last 7 schools are from non-Power 6 leagues, which is interesting. So
do we have a minute that we could add in this segment? I have so earlier today, Hunter Dickinson spoke to the media, and he this goes on them dropping out of the top 10, kind of asked where they are confidence wise, and he has an interesting comparison. Do we have time to play this?
Yeah, let me pull it up. I
have it right here.
Oh, you got it all set? Okay, yeah, go ahead, fire away.
So he makes an interesting comparison. I guess he saw it on Twitter sometime in the last day or two. Here it is.
I thought he was isn't he from the DC area?
Yeah, but I mean,
a Bills fan?
But think about this.
Who's bandwagoning the Bills? I guess now, but
I don't know. I mean, the Washington team has not always been good.
This is true. Yeah, he grew up with some pretty lousy Washington football.
I mean,
concerns.
he's what, about my age, a couple of years younger than me?
Yeah,
probably?
he's younger than you by a few years. So he probably doesn't even remember that brief burst of Joe Gibbs optimism in the mid 2000s. That's probably Okay, yeah, I guess I see it now. But no, Vance asked in the YouTube comments, do you see KU making it to the Sweet 16? A lot of it's going to depend on matchups. To be completely honest, it's possible. I mean, they're going to be a top 4 seed in the tournament. They're down to a number 3 in a lot of the bracketology right now. I don't see them falling below that because unless they lose Tuesday night, they're not going to lose any more bad games. And I don't think the committee weighs the tournament all that heavily. It might affect the bubble, but I don't think it necessarily affects the top seeds. KU still got 12 quad 1 wins. They're still ranked in the top 15 in the country. They've still got, as we talked about earlier, some really impressive regular season victories. They're going to be a number 3 or number 4 seed. And by virtue of that, they will be expected to advance to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Can they do it? Yeah. They don't run into a team that outscores them from 3, then they can make the Sweet 16. I could see that. I still have some belief in the team's ceiling, especially if they can knock the rust off of McCullough, who was very obviously rusty on Saturday against Baylor.
Still scored 20 points though.
Yeah, which goes to show you how high a level he's playing at this year.
Which is interesting because the last time he came back, I think he's obviously a lot healthier than the last time that he tried to come back because he struggled in the game that he tried to come back in prior.
I guess where you really saw the rust was probably with his jump shot. That was where it was really obvious that he hadn't played there for a few weeks because they need him to be able to be a 3-point threat. They don't have a viable 3-point threat right now with Furphy struggling, with McCullough rusty. Dickinson has virtually stopped shooting 3-pointers because his jump shot's been so broken. They need somebody to be able to stretch the floor and give him a chance to make threes. You know who made a couple late in that game against Baylor? Elmarco Jackson. That was intriguing because sometimes I watch Elmarco Jackson and I think that he thinks if he shoots the basketball, Bill Self's going to take him out of the game and revoke his scholarship. Like they had a lineup out there against Baylor with 5 guys on the floor who I thought felt that way. But back to my point, I guess. Back to the question, Kansas's ceiling is still, I think, Elite Eight. I still think that is their ceiling because their starting 5 can be so good. It's just that their floor is a lot lower than we're accustomed to, and that's why you see Kansas where they're at. As far as the women's top 25, South Carolina remains the undisputed number 1 team in the country. K-State down a spot after going 1-1 last week. Home loss to Iowa State, but they rebounded and thrashed Texas Tech on Saturday. They dropped 1 spot to number 16 overall. South Carolina, Stanford, Iowa, Ohio State, and USC is your top 5. Top-ranked Big 12 teams are Texas at number 6, Baylor just behind K-State at number 17, Oklahoma at number 19. A couple of future conference opponents in the top 25 as well. Colorado 18 and Utah 22nd. So that's how the women's poll looks. The K-State women, by the way, they're the number 3 seed. They finished 3rd in the Big 12. They are going to play Saturday night at 8 p.m. at the T-Mobile Center. You'll be able to hear that game right here on 580 WIBW following what we hope will be coverage of some state championship basketball games on that Saturday, this coming Saturday. So K-State, the number 3 seed, they get the double bye, and they're going to play on Saturday night. KU is the 7 seed.
Who received a vote this week?
They did. They've been playing very good ball, and they showed up and also receiving votes. They're the 7 seed. They're going to play BYU at 5:30 on Friday night at the T-Mobile Center. If they win that game, they'd play Texas at 5:30 on Saturday. It'd be the game right before the K-State game. So that is your look at the top 25 polls. Couple of other men's college basketball notes to pass along. Tyler Perry named Big 12 Player of the Week this week. Obviously was exceptional in their win over West Virginia. And despite not landing the plane gracefully in the loss to Cincinnati, still had a really good game against Cincinnati. He was named Big 12 Player of the Week this week. Also, big injury loss for Houston. Seems like every year Houston deals with this. They have a player lost to injury with some proximity to the NCAA tournament. I think it was Tremont Mark last year that went out injured. This year, it's their freshman big man, JoJo Tugler, a player I like a lot. I think he's going to have a really good career at Houston, and he's their primary backup big. He has to have foot surgery. So looks like that is going to be all for Tugler's season.
Change what you think of Houston in the tournament this year?
I would say no. I think their ceiling in the tournament is still limited because I don't think they're a great shooting team. And teams that I want to make sure that I don't shortchange Houston offensively because I don't think they're a bad offensive team. I think Jamal Shedd could win National Player of the Year. He's going to win Big 12 Player of the Year. But they're 13th in the country in offense, which obviously pretty damn good, and they're number 1 in defense. The question I always have about teams that hang their hat so much on defense. It's a question I always had about Virginia until they, went and won it all. The question I had about Baylor before they got really good on both ends, and now they've kind of swung all the way in the other direction, and they're a really good offensive team, but they're not a great defensive team. But the question I always have about those teams who are defense first, I have the same question about Iowa State this year. What happens when you run into a team that scores it? Because you will, in the NCAA tournament, run into a team that will score it on you. Can you keep up? That'll be my question for Houston. Can they keep up? Losing Tugler, I don't know that it dramatically affects that. It's not a loss of any shooting, but it certainly is a loss of post depth for a team that already isn't very big. So they could catch a bad matchup against a team with some real size that could be efficient against them in the post. A team that did that to them was Kansas. Kansas was really efficient against them in the post, and Houston couldn't keep up offensively because they didn't make enough three-pointers. They don't have enough elite shooting. So it's a big loss, no doubt. But for me, the concerns I have about Houston personally are not really affected one way or another by Tugler going out. Anyway, that's college basketball portion of headlines. What do you have next for us, Spencer?
What do I have next for you? I'm going to keep it in college basketball. Caitlin Clark becomes the NCAA all-time leading scorer, passing Pistol Pete.
Yes.
And I have to say, it was so enjoyable tuning into that broadcast. You know why?
Gus Johnson?
Because Gus Johnson was on the call.
Gus and Caitlin Clark is a great match. We love Gus losing his mind over long three-pointers, and nobody makes more long three-pointers than Caitlin Clark. So it's a perfect match of broadcaster and player. A little bit anticlimactic. Clark got the free throws on got the record on technical free throws at the end of the first half. It should not have been a technical. There was a little bit of exaggeration from Miss Clark on the contact from the Ohio State player. It got the ref's attention. It got the technical foul. It's not like she went down, but definitely, made a meal of the disagreement she was having with the Ohio State player.
Connection in that game. One of Marshall's best basketball players of all time was the head referee.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know that. Yeah. I know that Caitlin Clark is a big deal and that women's basketball is becoming a bigger deal, much more part of the sports landscape. And this is how I know Caitlin Clark has haters. Caitlin Clark has people who do not like her. Caitlin Clark has people calling her a flopper. Caitlin Clark has people who do not like her, who are wishing her ill, who are rooting against her. And look, that's great. I think that's terrific, because if you're not taking the sport seriously, then you just look at Caitlin Clark and you go, oh, good for her. That's neat. That's neat that she set that record. For people to feel like real feelings about Caitlin Clark as a player, to the point where there's some extreme people who, I guess they're not all extreme, but Caitlin Clark has haters. Caitlin Clark has people who are preying on her downfall a little bit. And you don't get there if people aren't taking women's basketball more seriously. So it's actually a really good sign for women's basketball and its growing popularity that there are people out there hating on Caitlin Clark. So I watched a good chunk of that game yesterday, actually, Iowa, Ohio State. I think I'm all in on the Hawkeyes for three reasons. Number one, they got the GOAT. They got Caitlin Clark. I said Caitlin Clark has haters. I am not one of those.
Clearly.
I like watching her play. I like watching her play basketball. I obviously the long range threes, but I think she's a really good passer. I like watching how her teammates play off of her. They run the high-low. They get that Stolke, a lot of easy hoops underneath. Gabby Marshall, I would love to be Gabby Marshall for a game and shoot that many wide open threes. Like I like watching Iowa play, and Caitlin Clark is at the fulcrum of all the things that Iowa does that I like from a basketball watcher perspective. So obviously they got Caitlin Clark, so I like that. They got a girl who went to my alma mater, my high school alma mater, Grandview High School, Aurora, Colorado. I forget her name now, and I got it confused. Addison O'Grady, I think is her name. She wears number 44. She's their backup center. But she went to Grandview High School in Aurora, Colorado, which is where I went to high school. And lest we forget, here in the state of Kansas, Iowa honored Ava Jones' scholarship. Ava Jones was a star at Nickerson High School, was on her way to play basketball at Iowa. And then the summer before her senior year, there was a terrible accident that occurred when she was in Louisville to play in an AAU tournament. She and her family were hit by an impaired driver. Her father lost her life, and Ava Jones suffered some traumatic injuries that are probably going to keep her from ever playing basketball, certainly keep her from playing at the level she used to play at. But Iowa chose to honor her scholarship. She's still part of the team. She's on the roster. And I salute Coach Lisa Bluter for doing that. So I got a lot of regard for that Iowa program. I'll be pulling for them in March. I will. Let's keep it moving here on our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We got some baseball news today. A very popular player around these parts has called it a career. Josh Donaldson hanging it up.
Yeah.
I say that sarcastically. Although I would say that sarcastically no matter where I was. If I was talking to Royals fans, if I were talking to fans of basically any team that Josh Donaldson didn't play for, I would say that sarcastically. Because either Josh Donaldson was on your team or you didn't like him very much. Former MVP called it a career after 13 seasons, 279 home runs, 1,310 hits, and what Buster Olney calls, generously, a long-earned reputation as someone who competed with an edge, unafraid of offending opponents. Yeah, like the time he called Tim Anderson Jackie Robinson. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really cool stuff. Won the MVP in 2015 with the Toronto Blue Jays. That, of course, is when Royals fans will remember their peak hatred of Josh Donaldson taking place as the Royals and Blue Jays met in what was a pretty tense 6-game American League Championship Series. Late bloomer Donaldson, but when he broke out, he was a feared power threat at third base for many different years and many different teams. He was pretty clearly cooked last year. The Brewers hit 50 and calling it a career after that. So Josh Donaldson retires after 13 seasons. I know that many, many fans around here, many fans across baseball will not miss him.
Yeah.
But he, in his prime, great player, great hitter. Yeah, here we go. We got a text from 785. Don't let the door smack you in the backside. Yeah. I think that sums up the popular opinion on Josh Donaldson around these parts and around most parts, like I said. You got another headline?
Yeah, I do. Back to college football. K-State hires a Kansas native, Nate Katzer, as special teams analyst. You know where he spent his last 5 seasons?
I do, but go ahead and tell the people.
In Washington, the Washington, D.C. area, coaching the Commanders as their special teams coordinator. Beloved special teams coordinator by all the players there, really. They loved him. And he got multiple mentions in interviews and in press conferences when, the punter, their best player, basically, for a while. Tressway.
Yeah.
He got multiple mentions from him. And he tried to fix their long snapper's ability to long snap in Cameron Cheeseman, but that didn't work, so they cut Cam Cheeseman. But Cam Cheeseman was a Ron Rivera pick in the draft.
So can you say the last name again for me, please? I want to make sure I get it right.
Katzer.
Nate Katzer. He's from Scott City. He's a Beaver. So Kansas native coming back to his home state. Kansas State special teams last year were gross. And that is not a thing that has been said about Kansas State special teams for many, 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 many years. That was always a point of pride. Kansas State was special teams under Bill Snyder for all those years. And even in the early portion of the Chris Kleiman era, they've had success on special teams. They've had obviously some great kickers, sent Tyler Zentner to the NFL, great return men like Josh Youngblood was an All-American as a freshman. Phillip Brooks had success as a return man. I'm going to call him the wrong name. Malik Knowles. I was going to call him Malik Neighbors. That's not right. Malik Knowles was a solid return man. Last year, it kind of all fell apart special teams wise for K-State. They were genuinely not good at special teams. So if Nate Katzer can be the conquering hero returning to his home state and fix K-State special teams, get him back to being special teams then that'll be a pretty good hire for Chris Kleiman. Couple of other headlines I want to get to. It was a sad weekend in the sports world and particularly locally here in the state of Kansas. A couple of players who are of note passed away over the weekend. UL Washington, former Royals shortstop. We've had a couple people mention him, Mark and Vance in the YouTube comments. UL Washington died at the age of 70. Not just a former Royal, but a Kansas Cityan player who came up through the Urban Academy back when that was operating at its peak in the 70s. Played for the Royals from 1977 to 1984. Hit 251 in his career and was the starting shortstop on the 1980 American League champion Royals. That was the first pennant in franchise history. But nobody remembers that stuff about UL Washington. All they remember is that he played with a toothpick in his mouth. It was, when he was coming up, a blade of grass. It was just something he did for comfort's sake. He'd put a blade of grass in his mouth and just kind of have it hanging out. Well, I don't know what you remember about the old Kauffman Stadium, Spencer. Probably nothing, but they used to play on turf. They used to play on turf back in the 70s and 80s. You know what you can't do with AstroTurf? Pick up a blade of it and put it in your mouth. So
yeah,
instead of the blade of grass, it became a toothpick, and it just kind of stuck. And so that is what UL Washington is probably most known for beyond anything he did on the field, any particular great moments or plays or great seasons. But steady presence, a local, and somebody who was a solid player for a pennant winner and remembered fondly by Royals fans, certainly for more than just the toothpick. UO Washington died. He had been battling cancer. He was 70 years old. Also, news out of Wichita today that former Wichita State baseball standout Carl Hall passed away at the age of 53. He was the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year in 1994, played for 2 Wichita State teams that were national runners-up back in 1991 and 1993. He's a Shocker Sports Hall of Famer, Wichita Sports Hall of Famer. In 2010, he suffered catastrophic injuries in a car accident and had to have neck and spinal surgery, lost the use of his limbs after that, was paralyzed from the neck down, but continued to serve as an inspiration, was a motivational speaker in the area, and did a lot of good for people in the Air Capital. I know that his loss is felt acutely by a lot of people that I used to know back in Wichita when I spent a brief amount of time there. So Carl Hall passed away at the age of 53. So condolences to the families of UO Washington and the family and friends, loved ones of Carl Hall. I want to end, though, on an uplifting note, a happy note involving not just a local athlete, but the professional sports franchise of Topeka, Kansas. I'm speaking, of course, about PGA Tour golfer Gary Woodland. Had a tough go of it at the Cognizant Classic over the weekend at the PGA National. Did not make the cut. But again, the fact that G-Dub is back playing at all after the very risky brain surgery he underwent last September is truly remarkable. And he is being recognized by the Golf Writers Association of America as the 2023 Ben Hogan Award winner. That is given annually to an individual who has continued to be active in golf despite a physical handicap or serious illness. He will receive his award on the eve of the 88th Masters, which will be the 12th Masters that Woodland participates in. He still has the exemption by virtue of being the 2018 U.S. Open champion. So salute to Gary Woodland. Again, it continues to be just wonderful to see him back on the golf course and competing after that life-threatening lesion on his brain and a surgery that had things gone wrong could have had terrible effects for Gary, and certainly would have meant the end of his golfing career. But he made it through the surgery. He returned to golf 3 months after the surgery and does plan again to play in the Masters this coming April. So salute to Gary Woodland, the Ben Hogan Award winner from the Golf Writers Association of America. That's going to do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines today. When we come back, this is March. It's tournament week. Why do I get the feeling that people aren't super energized about college basketball this year? We'll talk through that, Spencer and I, when we come back here on 580 Sports Talk. 537 on 5A Sports Talk. Sometimes I'm just tempted to let some of our music beds ride. This is always one of them. I just want to listen to the music. You know this one, Tame Impala?
I do not. I'm not very cultured in that kind of music. I will admit it. I'm strong enough to admit it.
Not very cultured.
There's a lot of music beds on here I have never heard of.
You should check out this album sometime. Currents by Tame Impala, one of my favorite albums of the 2010s. That's Spencer. I'm Dan. Brendan's at the Washburn Basketball Coaches Show. That'll get started at 6 o'clock tonight over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. You can go hang out at Skinny Sports Bar and Grill with Brendan and the gang. It is tournament week. We mentioned earlier the Atlantic Sun Tournament kicks things off tonight. There are games that are do or die college basketball every night from now until Selection Sunday. And then, of course, you've got the NCAA tournament. Now, I'm not telling you how to live your life, but there was a younger Dan who might have been able to go home from work after 5A Sports Talk and say, you know what? I will watch Kennesaw State and Jacksonville, followed by Florida Gulf Coast and Queens University. It is Queens University, right? Isn't that Queens
Charlotte?
College? Yeah.
Yes. I only know that because in the first game of the year last year, they beat Marshall.
Okay.
So I'd never heard of them until last year.
Yeah. They're relatively new to Division One.
Yes.
They were Division Two for a long time. So both of those games tip off at 6 o'clock tonight. You can see them on ESPN Plus if you're so inclined. I understand if you are not. But anyway, I say all that to say this. It is championship week. And it's really championship 2 weeks in college basketball. But it does not feel to me like there's any real buzz for this time of year, at least not in the way that there usually is. And there are a lot of things like buzz is relative, right? Like I'm pretty sure if we were doing a sports talk radio segment right now in Hartford, we'd be buzzing.
Yeah.
Or if we were doing, I got a buddy who does sports talk radio in what they call the Triad in North Carolina. I bet they're buzzing. I bet they're pretty hyped. I bet they're excited in Houston. I bet they're excited in West Lafayette, Indiana. Like buzz is relative, but I don't feel it here this year because as we talked about a little earlier when we were discussing Kansas and the 0-2 week they just had, the fact that they've already lost more Big 12 games than in any year under Bill Self. It feels like there's a not insignificant portion of the Kansas fan base that feels resigned to a first weekend exit. Almost resigned to that as well. Yeah, we ain't got it this year. You know, we make the tournament, probably get upset in the second round for a second straight year for a third time in 4 years, and that'll be that. And maybe I'm wrong. And if you're a KU fan, you can tell me that I'm incorrect. You can tell me that's not how you feel about this team. Personally, I think their ceiling still is a second weekend Elite Eight ceiling. But it's been a bummer of a regular season. And Hunter Dickinson drew the Chiefs analog. And I thought that was really interesting because where I see the parallel, if you're going to make me compare, and it's not quite right. Like I don't see Kansas basketball occupying the same space in college basketball at the moment that the Kansas City Chiefs occupy in the NFL universe. But over the years, watching Kansas play, there's a inevitability to them. There's always been that inevitability that, of course, they're going to win the Big 12. They go behind. They're 2 games behind in the conference halfway through. Like they're 6-3 in the league, and somebody's stormed out of the gates at 8-1. And maybe this is the year somebody else wins the Big 12. And no, it's never the year somebody else wins the Big 12. For 16 straight years, it was literally never the year somebody else wins the Big 12. It was always Kansas. And if you got a piece, you were sharing it with them. Kansas had this air of inevitability about them. Even last year, when they were number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, they've had that feeling even in years where they haven't made the deep tournament runs. And it's kind of been an every other year thing the last little while. Like last year, they lost the second round. Year before that, won the national title. 2021, they lost in the second round. Year before that, 2020, I think they had the best team in the country that year. 2019, lost in the second round. 2018, went to the Final Four. So it's kind of been every other year in terms of their tournament success. Yeah. But in terms of their overall year-over-year success, I mean, you heard us say it. They've been outside the top 10 in 3 years. You don't get to that status. You don't win all these league championships and get all these high seeds without winning a whole bunch of games. So there's that feeling that, oh, Kansas is going to win. Yeah, they'll figure it out. They'll find a way. They'll hit their stride in February and March because that's what they've always done. And this team has not. And how similar does that feel to watching the Chiefs this past season? It was the same kind of feeling, right? Like, well, it's what did Mahomes say after the Eagles? I think it was after the Eagles game where he says, well, we're in the go zone now. It's time for us to get going, step on the gas, whatever analogy. It might have been even after the Bills game. It might have been after the frustration of the Bills game he said that. But we kept waiting for that to happen with the Chiefs. Like they're going to step on the gas and they're going to round into form in November and December because that's what they've always done with Andy Reid as their coach and Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. That's what they do. And then they didn't. And then it made you wonder, are they going to do it at all? In the Chiefs' case, obviously they did. In KU's case, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it doesn't feel quite that way. They don't. Hunter Dickinson handled it very humbly, but he ain't Patrick Mahomes. Like college basketball doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes, but even if it did, he ain't it. He's a great player, but he's not that. So you have a KU team that doesn't maybe feel like their ceiling is what it typically is entering the NCAA tournament. You have a K-State team that's probably not dancing at all. K-State needs to go 2-0 or they need to win the Big 12 tournament. I don't think either of those things are happening.
Yeah.
They are objectively like one of the 70 to 75 best college basketball teams in the country, like probably one of the 50 best, if we're really being honest about it, when you clear out the list of, automatic qualifiers. Like, do I think K-State would win the Atlantic Sun tournament? Yeah, probably without breaking a sweat. So yeah, they're one of like the 50 best teams in the country at playing college basketball. It's not a bad thing to be. It's just not good enough. Not a good enough thing to be. And that's where K-State finds themselves right now. So around here, the buzz for the tournament, maybe not so big. And then you add to that the fact that like the best of the quote unquote blue bloods, the defending national champions from UConn, I think they're the best team. But do you feel anything about UConn? Does UConn make you feel anything?
Not right now.
I mean, ever. Like, did you ever feel anything about UConn basketball, even when they were like, they've won 5 national championships in the last 25 years. That's a run that like Kansas can't match that. Duke can't match that. Kentucky can't match that. They won 5 natties in 25 years. That's remarkable. But you don't feel anything. You don't feel UConn the way you feel like, hate them or love them. You feel a way about Duke, and you feel a way about Kentucky
and UNC.
You feel a way about Carolina. You feel a way about Kansas. You don't feel that about UConn. So they go into the tournament as the defending champs and the favorite, and it's like, okay, that's nice. They're good, but I don't know. They don't move people. And if they're not the juggernaut going into the tournament, then it's Purdue, and nobody's buying Purdue because they lost to a 16 seed last year. So nobody thinks they're actually good. Like, I don't know, like, Spencer, relative to your usual excitement about the NCAA tournament, whatever that excitement level may be, do you feel like, oh, man, I'm excited for this tournament. I'm excited to see how this turns out. Or is it a little flat for you two?
It seems a little flat, but I've also been, like, paying attention to 2 specific teams down the stretch here as compared to before. I was kind of had a broader view.
Sure.
Like now I'm more like coming from the outside here and not watching Kansas and K-State as much as I have here in the last month and a half, nearly 2 months that I have. It's definitely different, but I feel too, I don't know. I just feel like you're onto something about overall. It just feels not the same.
Yeah, just a little bit muted. And the other part of it too, and we've talked about this at length, particularly relative to the women's game now, and this is why I think the women's game is growing in popularity. You don't have stars. Like you don't have players that you know a lot about, that you've seen play a lot,
because a lot of them are one and done.
Yeah, and
or they transfer so much that
yeah,
you don't even know don't know what team they're on.
Right. There's the player movement does, like, I'm all for it from the player perspective, but it does hurt college basketball as an entertainment product because teams typically don't stay together. Like,
I think too, a lot of it seems like a lot of top 20, even expanding it out to 25 teams, top 25 teams, this, at least in the last 3-4 weeks, have been upset. So I think it's hard to say who is really a contender because so-and-so is upsetting this time and this team is upsetting this team. And it just seems like we've had a lot more of that. I could be totally wrong.
And
it just feels like there's been more of that. So there's no who's the number one team. I feel like a lot of, like, those Kentucky years, we felt like we knew Kentucky was going to win it all, or Duke or UNC was going to make it that. But it just seems like
you tuned in,
or UVA. Like UVA is when they have made their runs, and you don't see that this year because they're losing to teams they shouldn't lose to left and right.
Yeah, like we have a texter here from 785 on the Top City Mail Supply text line. After what Creighton did to UConn, I don't see UConn winning it. Like, I think every team at the top of the college basketball polls right now has had a segment of the season where they have looked disappointing, where they have had bad losses, blowout losses. Then again, to be fair to UConn, they had a stretch in the middle of last year where they could beat anybody. And there was a reason they were a 4 seed last year. Then they got to the tournament, they hit the gas. So there's a reason I still think UConn is going to win it all. But yeah, there's not that team that the attraction is not there. The star attractions, whether that's the players, whether that's the coaches, whether that's the programs, the brands, whether that's the teams themselves, you're missing that this year in college basketball. But hey, maybe over the next 2 years or next 2 weeks, we'll get some storylines that develop. We got to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We're back with more after this. 5:52 here on 580 Sports Talk. It's going to be a very quick segment. Dan and Spencer with you. We got to get out for the final word and wrap up the show. But Barbara comments, we were talking about the college basketball landscape, and Barbara in the YouTube live chat says that NIL has leveled the playing field a lot. And I suppose that's true, but a level playing field should mean more teams have a chance to win the national championship. Yeah. And on the one hand, that sounds great, right? Like, more, if you're a fan of a certain team, you've got a better chance of winning a national championship, maybe you feel like, than you did before. But I think from a national perspective, the perspective that fans have is that they want to see Duke and Kentucky and Kansas and North Carolina and UCLA and Indiana and UConn and these other recognizable basketball brands, that Michigan State, like, that's what you want to see at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's where the NBA players are coming from. Like, barring seeing those recognizable programs, you want to see, like, guys you might get to see next year, guys you've seen for 2-3 years, or guys you might be following for years to come if you're a basketball fan in the NBA. And there's just less and less of that in college basketball. And I think that when you have less broad excitement, it makes it a little bit less exciting to follow at times. We have to get out. We got final word coming up next year on 580 Sports Talk. Final word time. We got less than a minute. Spencer, you go first.
All right. To make a long story short, my last job, I got to cover D2 Shepherd University. Their best women's basketball player, Abby Beeman, became an All-American. Their head coach left. She ended up transferring herself to D1 Marshall, where I went to school. She won the Conference Player of the Year today and was as well as conference first team as Marshall, about to make a run into the tournament. But pretty cool as my career and my college career meet.
Yeah, very cool. Congratulations to her, and go Herd. Final word for me today. Doesn't seem like L'Jarius Sneed is going to get a long-term deal from the Chiefs, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does indeed play on the tag. I think that messaging today from the Chiefs was very direct, and I think the message is, if you want L'Jarius Sneed, you better pony up. That's going to do it for the show today. We're back tomorrow from 2 to 6. For Brendan, for Spencer, I'm Dan. This has been 580 Sports Talk. See ya.